Hey, and the Keep listeners, looking to get your horror fix this fall? Check out Fearzine. Fearzine is a physical and digital magazine focused on horror games, nostalgia, and titles from indie studios and developers. We are currently running our Kickstarter for issue 2 and have lots of cool goodies available. Find the link in the description and help us deliver an awesome physical magazine featuring over 70 horror video games.
So it's been a really long time since you and I have actually done a podcast together. Like a couple of years, 2-3 years now. When was
4
the last
years.
one? 4 years.
4 years. It was in 2020.
Jesus Christ, man. So
Yeah.
let's just start with kind of like letting this audience know who you are and what you do. So, Trindade, I can't fucking speak English. So you can say your own fucking name. Yeah.
No, that's okay. That's okay. My name is Trindade Pereira. I am a video game translator since 2015, so 9 years now. You last interviewed me back in 2020. I had a different microphone, a different setup. I still do what I do. I love boomer shooters in general. I am 27 years old. I'm going to turn 28 next month, September 23rd. And I'm a very reserved person. I like playing video games, and that's what I do. I like localizing them into Brazilian Portuguese. Some good projects under my belt. I rather work with a team instead of by myself. I have translated some games on myself, but I mostly enjoy working with a team because I can learn from them and they can learn from me. We can finish a project faster. The quality is higher than just me working by myself. So I just like working with people and helping them out and getting help as well. I'm very grateful for everyone that has helped me get to where I am today.
So before we jump into the whole, language side of this whole thing, you're talking about you prefer working with a team over working by yourself. I have such a complicated relationship with that. Exactly that thing. It's like on one hand, I hate being by myself. Like if I'm alone at home, I'm probably on the phone with somebody or something, or talking to somebody, or talking to the dog out loud or whatever. Like I can't stand to be by myself.
Yeah.
I also typically kind of suck as a team member because I get very frustrated when I will want things to be as efficient as possible in my mind. It's like so stubborn, it's so annoying, but I'm just like, it's my way or the highway. I'm the leader here. We're doing it this way. And if everybody can agree on that, I'm good. But if it's like, oh no, you just need to like kind of back off and be part of a team, that was always really difficult for me until I joined the military, which taught me sometimes your opinion is not important. Sometimes even if there is a better way to do it, everyone else is not going to conform to that or understand it. And it's more efficient to just continue with the plan we had than it is to explain it to everybody and train everybody to do it the new way.
Yeah.
So I totally get that, man. Working with a team of linguists or a team of translators, do you typically like say it's like a larger game, like an RPG or something like that? Do you like divide it off into like you're going to do this section and you're going to do this section, or do you maybe like have one person do it all so that it's all in one voice and then have everybody else check them? Or I've never done it before, so I'm curious.
So for large projects like this, I've never been like a leader of such a high profile game. That requires a big team, but I can say from experience that usually you work with a translation agency that we called a language service provider, and then they basically build a team of translators and editors, which are basically My mom is calling me right now. Just a sec.
Uh-oh.
Oi?
Mama.
Agora eu não posso, eu tô no episódio aqui agora. Okay, she just told me that the cake is done, but I can't go eat the cake right now.
Bruce, the cake is alive. Cake is alive.
Oh,
That's not your mother talking.
yeah. And I told her, hey, I'm going to be in a podcast episode today, so
No, that's so sweet. That's really sweet of her to
Yeah.
baking you a cake, dude.
Baking a cake.
You just celebrated a birthday? Or,
I'm gonna turn 28 next month in September.
right. Okay, so this is not your birthday cake. This is just
No.
cake for the sake of cake.
No, just a regular cake. Just yeah.
Yeah, man.
As I was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna get back on, as you were saying, we were talking about working with a large team versus not.
Yeah. So yeah, for a big project like this, usually they build a team of translators and editors. The editors are the ones that revise the text, so they try to look for mistakes and try to improve the translation. They give you feedback and stuff like that. I think the biggest team that I've ever worked on was like almost 10 people, and that's a very big team for a localization project. So they separate, like, oh, you're gonna get like 50,000 words to translate, you're gonna get 40,000, you get 70,000 and whatever. And the way and the reason that they divide the translation like this is because it's based on how available you are.
Mhm.
Because you might have other projects undergoing, so you cannot have we have 500,000 words, we have 10 translators, so 50,000 per each. No, that's not how it works most of the time. It's based on how available people are. So there's that. Usually the project managers are the one that choose how they ask how many words can you take, how available are you, and stuff like that. They try to work with you, and then they say, oh, I'm just gonna give you this part of the project. And we use softwares to manage the translation projects, like CAT tools, computer assisted translation tools.
Right.
Sometimes it's a tool, yeah. Sometimes it's a tool, an online tool that you have to create an account and log in, and you don't have to install anything. It's through your web browser. Sometimes you have to, it's a piece of software, so you have to download and install, and you have to connect to a server, or no server at all. They might send you all the files through an email and stuff like that. It depends on the company that you're working for. They have their own way of organizing such projects. But yeah, that's how they are organized. Like it depends on how available you are. Some companies might ask you if you are specialized in the genre of the game. For example, a big RPG or an FPS game or a farm game, an RTS, or a tactical game, or a simulator. There's a lot of different genres available. So it's I have a few favorites. I usually understand almost every genre, but not all of them. I'm not like very good in all of them, but like, for example, FPS and RPGs are my favorites. So I have a lot of I know a lot of the vocabulary that goes in those games, the terminology. I play them almost every day. Mostly first-person shooters, not just boomer shooters, but first-person shooters in general as well. I was just playing Tripang 2 today,
Right.
Because of the new updates and DLC that came out recently. So yeah, that's how it usually goes.
So in my experience, because I was working in production and marketing in the games industry for years now, I have always, I will say I was always disappointed with how generally companies handle localization. And of course, there's monetary reasons for why it is the way it is. Like, it's like you're not going to do every language. You're going to do the ones that you're actually going to see a profit in. That it's worth the investment to have translated.
Yeah.
But I always just when I first met you, I never even thought for a second about who does the Brazilian Portuguese translation of a game. Like, it doesn't, as you were explaining to me, like sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And then there's like, how many billion people, a few hundred million or at least in
around
Brazil?
200 million people. I think a bit more than 200 million people.
Yeah. And then, so imagine this. I think I've probably mentioned to these. You and I are probably going to like touch on topics that you and I have discussed it many times over because every single time we talk, like which is pretty often, like once or twice a week at least, I'm always like, God, we should have fucking recorded that. That was like amazing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I totally get that.
but so I really don't like that a lot of languages don't get served, or like countries or nations of people don't actually ever have the chance to like play a game at all or in their own language, just
Yeah.
because the Western world dismisses them as not important. So like there's not a lot of games on Steam that are translated into Hindi, for example. And I'm like, dude, there's like
Oh, yeah.
a quarter of the world's population lives in India. And then people will tell me, I would be explaining this to like corporate people. I'd be like, hey, dude, we should be moving into that market. We should be really talking about like, how can we serve that audience? And then I would be met with, well, if you go on Steam and you look up the stats, there's not a lot of sales in India. So why would we translate it into Indian? And I'm like, because the reason they're not buying shit is because we're not providing them with a product they can enjoy.
Yeah.
And then they'll say like, well, it's a poorer country. They don't really have computers. I'm like, bitch, have you ever looked up a computer tutorial on YouTube ever?
Yeah. They are the most knowledgeable in the area.
I'm not saying anything. It's just about a stereotype. I'm just like, don't tell me that people in India don't have computers.
There's the computers way better than us.
I can definitely prove to you that they do. Have you ever called IC support? I think that's amazing. And I just think that it's a shame that this entire culture is not being served by the games industry. And it's not just them, but that's just a greater example of it. There's a lot of people that speak this language that are not being served.
Yeah.
It's insane. Brazilian is one of them, of course, but generally speaking, you have like the big few, which is like Spanish, German, Russian is always part of the package.
Yeah.
Simplified Chinese, Japanese in many cases, and the default is always going to be generally English. Yeah. Even game developers who are not native English speakers, if they want to make money, make their game in English. And I've seen some horrendous examples of like a guy from Italy who's making a game, and then I'm like playing it, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on with this menu? Like, what does this mean? What are they trying to say? And then someone would be like, oh, we haven't had an editor go over the English because the director of the game who did all the text is Italian. I'm like, what? That's fine. I mean, of course, but it's definitely smarter to be in English. You just have a better chance of reaching a larger audience by default.
Oh yeah.
Mm. But so what are just like examples of some like great games that a lot of people would know that just didn't go into Brazilian Portuguese, if you could think of off the top of your head?
It's actually hard to think about one because usually nowadays most games, at least the ones that are very popular, are in Brazilian Portuguese. They get localized, if not at release, at least in some point. And by the way, I was recording with 100% volume, so my voice is going to be kind of fucked.
It's okay. That's why we have Alex as a backup.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I always forgot to check my mic volume. But anyway, so most of the time games nowadays come out in Brazilian Portuguese, and when they don't, doesn't matter if it's an indie game or a AAA game, someone will ask about that. A Brazilian will be like, oh, where's Portuguese language or something like that. Not in perfect English because, that's not their native language, so it's understandable. But yeah, I would say that, Trepang 2 is one of the games that, unfortunately, it's not available in Brazilian Portuguese. I mean, if you go to the Steam page, it is translated, but the game itself is not. It's available in a lot of languages, but not Brazilian Portuguese. And I think that's a game that they could go that way if they want to, because they have the budget now. I mean, the game has been, a huge success. It's around a year old at this point, got a lot of updates and DLCs. And I think it would be nice if they consider doing that someday. What I did find is that there is one fan translation for the game. I haven't checked it out myself to see if it's any good, but it is available. Fans are gonna localize your game whether you like it or not. I mean, there are even visual novels out there that are only available officially in Japanese or any other language, but not English or any other language. And so the fans go out of their way to localize that. And I had to rely on a few fan translations of these visual novels. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to play them. So I'm actually very thankful that that's the case. But yeah, you were talking about monetary reasons, right? I understand that as much as I want all games to be available in my language, I know that sometimes it's not a good reason to do so because of budget reasons.
Let's just say I had a game like a boomer shooter that has 5,000 words in it.
All right.
You know, what would be like a typical price point in your mind for like what does that cost to translate into Portuguese?
Well, I can say how much I charge usually. I don't know how much agencies charge. Obviously, they have to charge more because they have their own costs and they have to pay their employees and stuff and taxes and everything. So it costs way more. But to me, it's usually I charge 7 or 8 cents of a US dollar per word. And you would have to do the math there. But and usually that's for translation. Sometimes I do the review as well for that price. It depends. I also try to see if it's a first game that they're developing, if they're getting their foot in the industry and stuff like that. Sometimes I charge lower than that, but not always. I just look at the size of the game's company and stuff to see if what I'm charging is good for them and for me, if it's fair. I don't like charging way too low or way too high. I try to find a balance there. So I don't have a fixed rate to charge people. That's just how I do it. You know, if you ask another translator, they'll have their own standards. And so, you know, I'm very, very flexible when it comes to that. But yeah, usually 7 or 8. Yeah.
The idea of measuring it by the word is it's interesting that a lot of people do that. You have to have some metric for what you're charging for. But I mean, I could see a lot of scenarios, especially in English, where it's like, I mean, how many times do you really need to translate the word the or to or a? You know, like this. It's generally speaking going to be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So you're not translating 5,000 different words. You might even be translating the same sentence over and over.
Yeah.
So you're really not doing that. Although you do have to have some metric. But for anybody who is not quick with the calculators, that's like $350 for 5,000 words.
Yeah.
Which is a fucking steal. Like I would do that right now. Easy.
Yeah.
But then you have like a lot of agencies will have, you know, we're a full service agency. We can translate it into everything that you request.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when I would be negotiating with them, I would be like, can you do Hindi? And they're like, whoa, never thought about that. And I'm like, why not? They're like, I don't know. We just never, no one's ever asked, or like we've never had someone request it. We don't have anybody at our agency who even can do that. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You're missing out on money.
Yeah.
But so for you, so you specifically only do, of course, Brazilian Portuguese.
Yeah.
Is you're not like working for an agency that does everything. I don't even know how that. I would like to actually have somebody on at some point who does, you know, do like full service all languages just to see how do they coordinate it. I've always thought it would be really cool for a company, like if you own a games company that has a sufficient enough income, like why not just have like the best individual linguists on retainer for every language? Maybe not on retainer like you're paying them all the time, but I mean like that's my guy. That's who I go to for this language. Instead of going to an agency that's like going to do basically usually a half-ass job of a bunch of different languages. And it's easy to sell someone a bad translation because they don't know what the fuck they're buying. They're not going to know until they hear feedback.
Yeah.
And they're not really going to care about the feedback as long as the game sells.
Yeah. A lot of tangents there.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, when it comes to quality, it's I'm not the guy who actually makes the decisions, stuff like that. But I understand. I as much as I hate to say this, I understand that from their point of view. If no one is saying anything, it's acceptable quality. It's good enough, right? So that's what a lot of companies try to achieve. Not necessarily excellence. I strive for excellence as much as I can. Anyway, I know a lot of people that do a way better job than me. I try to learn from them. So that's what I do. But yeah, when it comes to monetary reasons, stuff like that, in indie, I never really thought about that language and how much potential is there. I don't know. I think if you go on LinkedIn, you could try to find people that translate from English into Hindi or any other language into Hindi and see if there's actually a market for that. See if it's not very, very hard to find someone like that, because there are language pairs that are rare in the industry. I don't know, maybe if you try to find someone that translates from Russian into Portuguese or Italian into Portuguese or French, or Japanese. I know a few translators that translate from Japanese into Brazilian Portuguese. A few of them.
It's another thing that is always going to be a consideration is how many, because your value goes up the more niche your translation is. So translating from English into pretty much any language, somebody definitely knows how to do that. There's someone on earth who speaks that language and English.
Yeah.
Unless it's some weird Amazonian tribe that's never been contacted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you could still do pointy-talkie, or there's got to be a way. But then if it's something more niche, if you're translating from, I don't know, let's say Portuguese to, what do they speak in Malaysia? I don't know.
Yeah. That's a very rare.
What are the odds? How often do you have a person who is bilingual in both of those languages and then can do that translation? Or do you have to go kind of up a chain? It's well, we're going to translate it into English, and then we're going to translate it from English into this other language. It's probably actually more efficient than trying to find the one guy who does both.
Yeah.
But that one guy could charge whatever the fuck he wants if somebody really wants that service. It's like if you know how to fix pinball machines, you can name your price because there's no one who knows how to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I remember I was working when I was an electrician assistant years and years and years ago. And we were building a laser tag arena or an arcade, and it was they needed a dude who could do the pinball machines, and it was just one guy in the entire state of Alabama who knew how to do this. And I'm sure he made a boatload of money.
Oh yeah. You can totally take advantage of that.
Yeah. He was actually crazy. It's a brief little tangent. This dude was insane. Literally, I think he had some form of schizophrenia, or maybe he did too much acid in the 60s or whatever. But it's just but he knows how to fix a pinball machine, so he's the guy. You can't pick and choose.
I mean, that might as well be a requirement. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Actually.
I feel it's such a niche job to have. It's probably a crazy person. Normal people don't end up with that as their profession. I don't necessarily think.
Yeah.
At least not nowadays.
Yeah.
So let's broaden our horizons a little bit, more than just Portuguese. But you and I often talk about linguistics in general, and just the subtle differences between this and that, or how different languages are structured. Even because I feel a lot of, especially Americans who are monolingual, we only speak English.
Yeah.
We have a lot of. I think Spanish is obviously the second most spoken language in America, and then German is, I believe, third.
Yeah.
Then it's probably Asian stuff. But in general, most white American people are totally monolingual and will never learn another language at all, other than whatever's required for them to get through high school, which is usually 2 semesters in my experience. And you don't have to be very proficient. You just got to pass the class.
Yeah.
Then you get your, move on. So I took a Spanish class in high school, but I don't really speak Spanish. And in my case, I took French, and I can't really speak French. I can be polite. I can be I could ask somebody to go to bed with me if I really wanted to. But I didn't learn that from my French class. I learned that from the what is it, Lady Marmalade song. So, in your experience, if every Brazilian person learned how to speak English perfectly, you would be pretty much out of a job. You wouldn't have to do it anymore.
Yeah, that would be, that would not be my job at all. We do have English classes, and depending on the type of school you study, we also have Spanish classes. So it depends on how interested you are in learning those two languages, or any other for that matter. But yeah, our main language is Brazilian and Portuguese, and that's pretty much it. At least the spoken language. We also have we also have our own sign language. So, technically speaking, we speak two languages, but at least the spoken one is just Brazilian Portuguese. So yeah, the reason that we have Brazilian game translators in the first place is because, back in the day, there was no official translation into Portuguese at all in the gaming sphere. Not at all. So we would have to, grab a dictionary or something as we play the game in order to understand what we have to do to beat the game, right? And so that was our form of learning. We were learning the language without even realizing it. And school would just, it would help us out a little bit with the basics and grammar and stuff. But in order to communicate and actually read and understand, games were our main source of learning, basically. And so because of that, that's how we learned. I mean, if you ask any game translator, that's usually how they learn. And then there's also other requirements. English is just one of the requirements actually to translate something, because being bilingual is not enough. At least when it comes to being a professional, right? Because if you're a teacher, for example, you might do translations on the side, and that's perfectly fine. But if you intend to become a professional one day, then you're going to have to study. For example, knowing English is one of the requirements, okay, but the second requirement is being proficient in your target language. And most of the time, your target language is your native language. That's how we usually do that, right? So you have to write well and know how to form well thought out phrases and texts, grammarly correct, organized and stuff. Try to be as perfectionist as you can be in the target language, because that's the language you're translating into. It doesn't matter how much English you know if you cannot write well in Portuguese. It really doesn't matter.
It was exactly the same way. So when I went to the Defense Language Institute, which is in Monterey, California, if anybody who's been in the military, in the U.S. military, and often even foreign militaries, if they're going to study languages, that's where they go.
Yeah.
And before you start any language course at all, you have to take 1 week of English. They literally it's like English week, because they're like, if you don't understand how your own language works, because you have it innately, like it just comes out of you like a child. You learned it not by having it explained to you, you learned it by learning it in the field.
Yeah.
And when you start talking about things like, because most native English speakers, that other than what they learned in English class, which they probably don't really care about, if we start talking about predicates and verbs and nouns and adverbs and articles, whatever parts of speech, and then I'm trying to explain to you how to do this in another language, and it works differently. Like the subject verb order is inversed or something like that. And if you don't understand what I'm saying when I say the subject verb order is reversed in Spanish or any Latin language, we don't want to be hung up on that. We want you to understand how your language works so that you can be better at learning another language.
Yeah.
And learning another language, oftentimes any other language, makes you better at your own language because it forces you to think about it differently.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. What I usually see is that some people know English, well enough because of their gaming experience, right? And they think, I'm gonna become a video game translator. I've been doing this as a fan. I know enough English. Might as well just send my CV and see how well I do, right? So in order for you to get hired in the first place, you have to go through a translation test. Pretty much every serious language service provider is going to give you one. and then you have to pass. If you don't, well, you can try next time. And I had to like review some tests that were handed to me to evaluate them, right? Like around 9 or 10 tests, all of them failed, all of them. And usually the problem is that it's either they translate very literally, they don't know the terminology that is used in Portuguese nowadays for certain genres, for RPGs, FPS, and stuff like that, because their source of reference is English only. So when they have to translate, they don't know what to do. They don't know what's mostly used nowadays. They don't know the word that is actually understandable for a lot of people. Or maybe they leave some stuff in English unnecessarily, which is going to be harder for someone that is not bilingual to understand what is being said. Because you have to understand that when you are localizing for a certain territory or a certain country, right? You're not localizing it for you. You're not localizing for other bilingual people. You're localizing it for everyone in your country or territory. So you have to think about that. And usually, people that aspire to be translators, it's not their fault that they don't know all of this stuff. You don't know all of it by the jump, right? But that's usually what I see when they try to do a translation test, try to pass on one, and it doesn't work. Another thing is grammar, and when they make some basic grammar mistakes that you learn in high school, or middle school, and you might think, maybe they just forgot. Yeah, but even if you did forget some things, you can always Google something that you don't know. You can always revise. You can always study, right? Because when I started translating, this was in 2015. The minute I started translating, I was like, dude, I have to get better in my own language. Otherwise, I'm going to make some grievous mistakes here. So every time I didn't know a certain rule, a certain language rule, I would just Google it and learn it that way, as I was doing. Because that's how I usually learn. I just learn by doing most of the time. I also learn by feedback, when people give me feedback, and I'm very thankful for that. I don't usually get feedback, and that's something that I try to give to people, because that's something that I just wish that more people would have done the same for me. So if I have the chance to give out feedback to other people, that's what I usually do, because then you can learn so much faster. You learn a lot so much faster, right? So yeah, going back to the translation test subject, that's what I usually see. So people just end up failing the test. And I try to give as much comments as I can, many comments as I can, about what they did wrong or what they did right as well, because they might not realize what they also did right. So I let them know, and all the other mistakes as well. And so I usually just hope that people take that seriously. And not, this guy is just being perfectionist and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, you're doing this for money. This is going to be your career. It's not, we can compare this to modding, right? Modding PC games. You're not an amateur anymore. Like, this is going to be your career. This is serious. Like, you're going to get paid to do this, and people are going to buy the product that you work on. So they expect a good quality. So you have to be more careful about what you do. In translation, it's the same thing, right? And by the way, I know that there are a lot of mods out there that are professional quality, and I'm very into those mods. But at least
we'll get into that too. You're always saying I'm a gamer. Like, you're not a gamer. You're a mod player.
A mod player.
I don't think I've ever seen you play a game. I think I've seen you play a lot of mods.
Well, I play Traping 2 without mods, so there's that. I like that game for what it is, But yeah,
my man does not like vanilla ice cream. He's got to have the toppings and everything.
Yeah. That's usually a game has to be good in the first place. Otherwise, people will not have this need to mod the game, right? If it was a shitty one in the first place. But anyway, so yeah, I make this comparison, and also at least when it comes to Brazilian Portuguese, most fan translations out there are not very good, in my opinion. And I don't say this to like offend people or anything, because I used to be a fan translator as well. I didn't have high standards when I was doing this for free, and that's fine. But I usually see a lot of mistakes there, because people were just doing it for fun and stuff. I cannot speak for other languages. I can only speak for mine. So yeah. But when I see a good fan translation, the unofficial ones that are made voluntarily, I usually try to talk to those guys because I see the potential there. We might work together someday. I might try to talk to the guy and learn from him or her, because it's so rare to see that. Like, I can count with one hand how many people I know that started as fan translators, that did really good fan translations, and are now making a living out of video game localization. Now, I know, like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 people that really takes this seriously. And I usually try to invite them to work with me. If something comes up and, they can help me out, I invite them. Or if it's a project that I am managing, I usually invite people too. They become my friends, and then we just keep learning from each other. It's really awesome. And this is also
very similar in that way, where I'm always trying, like I said earlier, I don't like to be alone. Like, I'm always trying to include other people.
Yeah.
And I guess in some ways it could come across like I'm trying to put work off on other folks, but that's like not how I see it at all. I'm like, no, I want every single time somebody wants an opportunity that I can like give them an opportunity, I'm doing it. Like, that's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, if you do good work, people will find you. People will find you, and they'll try to contact you and stuff. This is what I do mostly with my own podcast. Your podcast was actually one of my inspirations to make it in the first place. I had other inspirations as well, but since you interviewed me in 2020, I was like, maybe I can do this thing, and now I've been doing it for 3 years. Since
Did we
2021
meet? Were we like just playing Quakers? I don't even remember. Like, I feel like we were hanging out in the Discord or playing Quake or some shit, and then like you were just telling me what it is that you do, and I was like, dude, come on my show right now. Like,
you were just hanging out, like you were just sitting on a Discord channel, on a voice channel, right? And then I decided, I might as well join and talk to the guy, because I've listened to your podcast, at least a few episodes at the time. And then, you started asking me what I do for a living. I said, I'm a video game translator. I love what I do. And it was like, let's do an episode. And I remember being very, very happy about that. I was like, oh my God, I thought about this, and now it's happening. I was really happy about that.
It's so weird to me. And I'm actually curious to like get into at some point in this conversation, just podcasting in general.
Yeah.
But for me, I will never get used to people knowing who I am and knowing a lot of information about me because they listen to like hundreds of hours of me speaking, and then I don't know shit about them.
Yeah.
So it's like you're having a conversation with a stranger who knows a lot of information about you. That's so weird. And I don't think of myself. I don't ever want to think about myself as like a celebrity or fucking. It's not even like that. But it's just like, if I'm at a convention in Texas and some guy from Israel walks up to me and shakes my hand and says like, dude, I'm a huge fan of your show. I'm like, what?
That's unthinkable, right?
Even know, like I didn't even know that people in Israel listen to our podcast. Like, it's like, yeah, never even. It's so small on the map. When I'm looking on Captivate at the demographics of who listens to the show, it's not even big enough to hover the mouse over. And yet this guy's like, by the way, this is oh my goodness, I feel like such a jackass if I'm not going to spit his name out right now. Big Eye Guy was his online name.
All right.
But I'm just standing there at QuakeCon, and this guy he's like, I'm a huge fan of your shit. The guy traveled all the way from Israel to be here for QuakeCon or whatever. I'm like, this is insane. This is not real.
That's so cool.
And that's happened to me many, many different times. Like, not just in that context. Like, I've had someone, even in Denmark, there was a guy that had worked with me named Matt Hackenberg, who's an amazing artist. Yeah. He worked on Corticay and I believe Graven and maybe Wrath and Ruin. But like, he's from, I want to say Germany, and his wife is Belgian. Matt, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry. But and he comes up and he's like, dude, I'm like a huge fan of your show. I've like been a fan of In the Keep for years and years and years. I'm working on my own game, Cosmic Dawn, that's pretty much in line with what you do. Um, and I was just like mind blown. I'm like, how?
How?
This, how did we end up in the same place at the same time? And the truth is because we both work for 3D Realm.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to have an overlap of like, if you know Boomer Shooters, you probably know me and you probably know 3D Realms. That's just how it is.
Yeah, it's the same thing for me. When it comes to a Brazilian video game localization podcast, I think my podcast is the only one in the whole country, and it's so fucking niche. Like, it's so niche, and sometimes people come and say to me, "Oh, I listen to a lot of your episodes and stuff like that," and I always get very excited and also it puzzles me sometimes. Like you were saying, how people know me, in the first place. But yeah, it's very exciting, and I also congratulate you for all that success. I mean, you deserve it.
I don't know how to measure because it's not like I became famous and made $1 million. It's just that and I always try to tell people this.
Yeah.
It's not how many listeners you have. It is who is listening. If you got one guy in the audience or one lady in the audience who like makes a big difference in your life, and it's going to be more than one. Even if it's like 50 people, if 2 of them or 1 of them makes a big difference, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
It's people are always in today's society, especially with content creation, which is a phrase that I fucking hate.
Oh, really?
Are always concerned about like, I need to get a bajillion views on my YouTube channel, or I need this many subscribers, or I want this many followers on Instagram. And I'm like, that does not matter. That is an illusion. That's a lie. It's the cake. It's the cake.
Cake is a lie.
It's a lie.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that. What you need to do is find enough people who really fuck with you and what you're all about to keep it sustainable. And the opportunities will come over time.
Yeah.
I mean, you could not have convinced me in 2018 or 19 or whatever, when I started in the Keep podcast, that was going to take me as far as it did. Even if you couldn't have convinced me when it was happening how far it was going to take me, because I was like, I'll only get like a few hundred listens on most episodes. Sometimes I would have one that blew up, like a Sergeant Mark IV or some like bigger name kind of thing. But I would have you couldn't have, if you had told me in 4 years, you're going to be a producer for a major video game company, I would have said, no fucking way. That's not going to happen.
That's a fucking lie.
It's not possible. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. If people, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, what with you, it's like you just because you were interested in translation as a hobby, it turned into your career.
Yeah, it's still crazy to think about that. Actually, it's still crazy, and same thing for me. If somebody told me in before 2021, hey, you're going to become a podcaster, I was like, I don't understand even how microphones work or any audio stuff. Like, how am I going to do this? I don't have any interest. And then in 2021, I was like, I had this idea. Yeah, I had this idea. And then I told 2 colleagues of mine that helped me in the Ziggurat 2 project. Ziggurat 2 is like, I have a 2 monitor setup here, right? The monitor on my right has a wallpaper. Oh shit. Alex
He'll be back.
Oh, okay. He's going to be back. All right. There he is. Hey, Alex. Yeah, maybe you didn't.
Because you were muted for too long.
Yeah, you didn't like move the mouse or anything for a while.
We'll edit this little sub out, but are you an admin in this channel?
Me?
No.
Alex.
All right. I'm going to quickly give you an admin role, and we can change the settings in the Discord to not AFK people for being muted, for a longer period of time. If that makes sense.
Oh, that's better.
So let's see. Roles. You're going to be a corporate overlord from now on. All right. Go back to your hole. Maybe we should leave this in.
Make me a sandwich.
Brought up I just had like a flash of like 20 years from now, like I'm in a lawsuit and it's like you abuse your employees,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be like, no, I would never do that, and they just play that recording
Yeah.
back into your hole,
Go
bitch.
back to your whole bit.
Well,
it might be AI. We don't know. It's scary nowadays.
Alex Intelligence AI.
Yeah. I don't even remember where we were.
It's okay because so where we were was you were just going on this tangent about Ziggurat 2.
Oh yeah. So I have a 2-monitor setup, right? The monitor on my right here has a wallpaper of the Ziggurat 2's credit screen. And so I have all the names of the people who helped me make this project a reality. And so we have here 6 people, right? And I'm one of them. There's 2 here, Renata Kaoru Nakani and Maria Fernanda Alves. I talked to those 2 because they were professionals when they joined me on this project, right? The other ones were mostly amateurs, but they did help me as well. So I asked both of them, hey, I have this idea of just making a podcast about video game localization, and I have not found one so far, at least in Brazilian Portuguese, that is. What do you guys think? Should I do it? And they were like, yeah, you should. Like, yeah, there's nothing like that in the wild. I was like, okay. And so I started studying what I needed to actually start a podcast. I needed to basically learn how to use an audio editing software. And I didn't even know Audacity was a thing. Honestly, I didn't even know that it was a thing, and also that it was an open source software. So I started watching a lot of YouTube videos on how to use it, and keyboard shortcuts and everything. I spent a few days doing just that. So I was very, very, very immersed in the learning process because I wanted to make that happen. And so I watched a lot of tutorials from Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is a company that has this podcast hosting and distributing service. And they also have...
Yeah, I started off with Buzzsprout. They were my original distribution brand, and they're quite good.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd have negative to say about them, because they have great customer service, great everything.
Oh, yeah.
Is that if you are running one podcast, Buzzsprout is perfectly fine. So is Anchor, and if you're trying to go the free route, a lot of people, I don't think it's called Anchor, it's called like Spotify for podcasters or something. But
yeah, they changed name, yeah.
But then if you want to run a network of many different podcasts, as I do, then it's not ideal because you have to pay basically the same price per podcast. Whereas with like other brands like Captivate is what I use now. They're not a sponsor. I'm just saying that's what I use. Yeah. I can have as many different shows as I want on our network. And as long as you don't go over a certain amount of downloads, so it's more based on bandwidth than it is on what how many shows you have.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I ended up having to leave Buzzsprout.
Yeah. I also love their service. I got, and the reason that I went with them is because, they have this YouTube channel and they have a lot of tutorials there, a lot of them.
So much great, like a library of information. People who will respond to you and help you. Yeah, they're.
And I could have like watched all of that content and still go with another service, right? But since they helped me so much in learning what I needed to know to start a podcast, everything since, what platforms are there? What software do you have to use? How do you write your own description? How do you, what questions do you ask? How to actually interview a person in the first place? Like, they go over everything you need to know. And I was like, oh my God, this content is so good. And, I'm just going to give back to them, just to show them how grateful I am. And so that's why I hired their service. And I stayed with them for 3 years. And then for financial reasons, I had to switch to another free service, which is called Spreaker.
Okay.
And when I did that, I actually needed some support help. And, when you hire their service, you go to this private Facebook group that is only for Buzzsprout customers. And so people then can discuss about podcasting in general and stuff like that, right? And I would usually,
instead of you having to go that free route, why don't you just let me host your podcast on our network, and then you won't have to pay anything, because we're going to pay the $20 a month or whatever, for hosting, period.
Yeah.
And then you can have all of the tools we have instead of having to go with nothing against Spreaker. I'm just saying, like, I would rather you have access to all of the perks.
Yeah. Oh, we can get into details
transfer.
Like after this discussion, we can totally like get go deeper in that.
Whatever happened to the good old days when computer role-playing games spent more time telling great stories than stressing you out with season passes and needless grinding? Call of Ragnar is our effort to bring back the best in RPGs. Play in the immersive world as two friends adventure into a murder mystery that lands them in the middle of a battle between gods. Head over to callofSaragnar.com. That's call of SAREGNAR.com for more info. Be sure to wishlist on Steam.
So so I used to hear a lot about how Buzzsprout support was really good. People would always give positive feedback. Oh my God, this support is amazing and stuff. And I was like, okay, so this is my chance to see if that's true. And so I sent them an email. It was on a Sunday, right? I sent them an email asking for help. So, hey, I want to migrate my podcast to this service called Spreaker. It's nothing against your service or anything. It's just for my own personal reasons. I love you guys, but I need help with this. In 15 minutes, they replied to my email, and it was on a Sunday, right? At least where I live. And I was like, oh my God, this was so fast. And they gave me all the details, the tutorials and the links, everything. And so I could do it on my own. I didn't need them
so basically
anymore.
You just needed to move your RSS feed.
To move your RSS feed and how much time you need to actually wait for the migration process to finish. You need to wait a few weeks for that. Where you need to go, like the pages and where you need to click and stuff like that. So I needed their help with that. And they were so quick and so helpful. So I was like, oh, okay. So what people were saying is actually true. Is actually true. They are really good at supporting people. So now I'm using Spreaker. I don't know a lot about all the perks that I have. I've been using it for a few months now. It's usually good enough for me, but as you were saying, maybe I can migrate to yours as well. We can go into details about that later. But after that, I decided, in 2021, when I decided to start the podcast, I was like, okay, now I need people to invite and actually interview. And so the first person was called Mundo Nasher. At least that's his nickname online. Mundo Nasher. And he was the sole guy that translated Divinity Original Sin 2 into Brazilian Portuguese.
Huge.
It's a
for people listening that are not
game.
gamers.
That is
humongous.
That game is so huge. We're talking 1.5 million words, at least.
Let's do because I just wanted to put it into context. Earlier we said, a price for 5,000. So 0.07 times, you said 1.5 million?
Yeah.
So that's going to be 1,500,000.
I don't know the details if he was actually paid. There's a story behind it, and I can tell you all that I know from my side.
That's 100 God, I'm so bad at it. I gotta count zeros. That's three zeros. All right, that's too many zeros. 5. Yeah, I mean that's a $105,000 job.
$105,000
on your rate.
in BRL.
He did for free. This man did what would be $100,000.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so here's the thing, right? He initially did it for free. because he didn't know that the translation would actually become official. It was just a fan translation. You know, he made a lot of videos of him playing with his translation when it wasn't even out yet, so people could not download it. It didn't leak or anything, and it was basically just building hype. Like, I think this guy knows a lot about marketing. Like, holy shit, you know, there are a lot of even fucking articles written about him because he got so famous, you know. He made a lot of noise, and his fans also helped him make a lot of noise to reach Divinity's company, right? Which is Larian Studios. So Larian Studios was like, you know, we should talk to this guy. You know, let's see what this is all about, and if the translation is actually good. So yeah, after this, I don't know a lot of the details between their discussion because, you know, there might be NDAs involved. But what I do know is that they talked to him and they said, we're going to have 3 guys play with your translation, 3 specialists. They're going to play with your translation, right? And they're going to give us an okay. If we get 3 okays, it means that your translation is good enough and we can add it officially into the game. And so he got 3 okays and it became official. Now, if he got paid for the whole package, or if it was just a volunteer through and through, I actually don't know the details. He might have a contract with Larian Studios that he might not be able to give out all the details, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, he has to respect the contracts that he signs. But after that, he became a professional translator. Like, that's what he does now for a living, and he has a family. You know, he has his wife. I don't know how many children he has nowadays, but maybe 1 or 2. And that's how he provides for his family nowadays. Because he used to be a lawyer. The guy was a fucking lawyer, bro. And he became a video game localizer.
Probably why he's really, really good at language.
Exactly.
Being a lawyer, you have to be very specific about the language that you use. I mean, the legalese is considered a language.
Yeah. Because, you know, when I watched his streams, because he also streamed on YouTube and made videos of his translations, I was like, this guy is doing this for free, because he made other fan translations, you know, for other big RPG games like Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, right, and other RPG games, isometric ones, and his Portuguese was so good. I was like, bro, this is so rare to see nowadays. Like I said before, I only know like 3 or 4 people that started as volunteers making translations that good. And Mundo Nasher is one of them. I think his real name is Edson. His real name.
I'm going to have my buddy Jeremy on probably, I think, next week or sometime. It doesn't matter. Like, whoever's listening, sometime in the next several episodes, there will be a guy named Jeremy on. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. But he developed a game for Nintendo called Swapfire. It's like a first-person shooter, but like the mechanic is like, if you shoot someone, they don't die. You switch positions with them. It's a very cool game. Is it perfect? I don't know. Like, it's not. You know, it was developed for people playing on handheld Nintendos, but now it's going to be released on PC sometime in the near future. Maybe already by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
And we were talking about localization because I'm always going to bring it up as a marketer. Like, that's always going to be something that is on my mind. But the philosophy at Nintendo has, for a long time, been as much as possible make things symbols. So, like, instead of writing out enter or single player, you use a symbol that anyone from any language would recognize. So, like, an emblem, a circular emblem with a silhouette of one person is single player, and then the one next to it with 4 people is multiplayer.
Yeah,
obviously, don't need to translate the word. And I'm curious, like, how much of that do you encounter, and how do you think that, for instance, like, obviously it can't be done with like an RPG that has a shitload of text.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's important that you understand the story, but with something that's very simple, that's just like a game you can just jump into, like most Nintendo games. It's a fairly easy job on your part if the developer themselves considers that stuff before they start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen any good examples of that?
Well, I'm not much of a Nintendo player, but I saw an example of this with Dusk. For those of you that don't know, Dusk is a boomer shooter that was released in 2018. It was a huge success.
One of the most successful first-person shooters of all time.
Yeah.
It changed my that game changed my life.
Yeah, that game.
I can honestly say that.
Yeah, and for people that don't know which boomer shooter to start with Dusk. Yeah, might as well start with Dusk, and then you can go to Doom and Quake and whatever. But yeah, Dusk had this. They developed an update for the game that had that they would need to translate a few strings, and instead of actually writing them down, they used icons and symbols. So, for example, the save icon is basically like a floppy disk, right? And stuff like that. So they used that, and they actually said that the reasoning for that was to not have to localize those words. They even said in the update post on Steam. So I was like, oh, that's very interesting. I never really thought about that. If I used to play Nintendo games nowadays, it wouldn't be news to me. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, that's very interesting. But yeah, you cannot overdo it. You need text. If you're gonna tell a story, or if you or something, if you're gonna have tutorial in game to teach the player how to play the game, you're gonna have to rely mostly on text. And so I think that's the only example that I can think of that actually comes to mind.
The biggest example was it's outside of gaming. I was actually talking to Jeremy about this the other day. It was like, okay, see, it's not a Mandela effect thing, but back in the day when I was a young man, Starbucks used to say the word Starbucks on their logo. They stopped doing that, and now everybody knows that the symbol with the lady is Starbucks, the symbol. And the reason why they did that is because they were sick and tired of having to translate. They sell a cup with that logo on it, and then they have to localize to every single country that they open up a store in. Or they could just have the symbol, no word. People understand that means Starbucks wherever they're at.
Yeah.
And they save millions and millions of dollars on printing costs for making cups or like logos, signs for their stores.
Yeah.
Genius.
Yeah.
Absolutely fucking genius.
Genius. Never really thought about that. I mean, if you're on marketing, if you work with marketing or globalization, with all that stuff, it's not something that I understand a lot about myself. But every time that I have a conversation with you, I learn more about it. So I learn more about what goes through your mind when you have to localize, if it's feasible or not, how many words you're dealing with, how much it's going to cost, and stuff like that. Most of the time, we translators, we think about the linguistic side of things, and we usually try to hone that more and more. But yeah, I have to learn more about that stuff. So I'm actually glad that we still talk to this day. Not so often, but whenever we get the chance.
I mean, I talk to you, like I said at the beginning of this thing, like probably once or twice a week minimum.
I don't know.
Nearly all the time.
No. I mean, when was the last time, before, like, I don't know, maybe the last 2 times that we talked?
Literally, like last week.
I mean, last week we talked, and then before that was like, what, months or even a year?
No, I mean, if you want to really start breaking this down, like it's typically, if I am alone, I'm on the internet, because I'm trying to talk to people. So for just not to go on a whole tangent about my life right now, but I've literally just moved from like Denmark to Alabama. From Alabama, I went to Arizona, and then I went back to Alabama, and then I'm permanently in Arizona, and I'm about to move again in November to South Carolina, most likely. And so during those times, obviously I'm not on the internet.
Yeah.
But I just mean, like, when I'm in my house, there's no one else around, and I'm on the web, it's usually like doing game development stuff within the Keep. I mean, we're literally talking to each other in the Keep Games Discord server right now.
Oh yeah.
And I just try to make myself available. If I'm not doing anything else, or even if I am and I could just have my headset on, I'm trying to be present for the people who work with me.
Oh yeah.
If they have a question, if they just want to jump in, even if it's just to shoot the shit. But you're one of the people that's always there, like you and Nave and Alex and lots of different people.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Who just are regular participants in what we're doing here. So I would say, while there obviously have been big, long gaps where we don't talk a lot, like I'd say over the last several months, anytime that I'm not actively moving my ass from state to state across the country, I've been in the voice channel, and usually you're one of the people hanging out. So
Oh yeah.
we talk quite a lot. I don't know if you realize that.
Yeah, now that you put it that way, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we're speaking right now, it's August. So yeah, who knows where I'll be by the time this comes out. I'm so tired of moving, bro. I just want to like
Yeah, yeah. You told me
get
the whole
out.
story. I was like, how can someone move so much? So many
To
times.
in the past 3 years, I have been to so many different countries. It's absolutely insane. Like I had never left the United States until 2021, and then since then I've been to of course Denmark, Sweden, UK, the Netherlands as a whole, all over it.
Yeah.
Germany multiple times. I've been to Slovakia. I've been to uh, Austria. I've been to Czech Republic and back to America. And then even like breaking it down by country at that point, if you want to be fair, you have to divide American states too. So it's not like, oh, I just went to the United States. Like I've been to, uh, grew up in Alabama, ended up in California for the military, ended up in Mississippi from the military, ended up in Texas because of the military, ended up in Arizona because of the military, and now I'm back in Arizona. I'm just it when I say it all out loud, it sounds absolutely crazy because most of the people I grew up around, my siblings even, have never left home.
Yeah.
Um, and I wouldn't trade this experience for anything, but it is exhausting. Like moving is insanely exhausting.
Oh yeah. Well, I can only imagine. I mean, I never left the country myself. I've only, I've been in a plane only a few times in my life. First time when I was a kid, and then only very recently, like 2 years ago, I got a flight to São Paulo, another Brazil state. And it was so long since I last was on a plane, right? So yeah, but I never left the country, and if I have to, I think a good reason for me to do so would be to go to QuakeCon, and I know that if I go there, I would meet a lot of people that I know online, and just have fun. I really wish that I could go at least this year, but it already happened. Like QuakeCon is over. And also to see the announcements live. We got the Doom Eternal modding tools. We got Doom 1, Doom plus Doom 2, the new version by Night Dive. So many cool stuff. And seeing that live. Oh, there was also like the private showcase of the new Doom game that is not out. At least I saw nobody leak it. But it was like only for people that actually went to the event. Same thing they did for Doom 2016 back in the day. That they would close the doors and then, only people that are in this event can actually see some gameplay before everybody else. And so they did the same thing this year with Doom: The Dark Ages. And I think it would be awesome to see that live. Actually go there and talk to people. I don't know the experience of actually being in a country where nobody speaks your language. I have no idea how that feels. I have no idea. My brother does because he's been living in Australia for 7 or 8 years now. I think 7 years. Yeah, 7 years.
It's very interesting. But obviously, like I'm very lucky. I consider myself blessed to be a native English speaker. I think that's like one of the best lottery tickets you could pull in life.
Yeah.
Is to just be born a native English speaker because it makes life very the inconveniences that you face in a country where someone doesn't speak English are so much lower than if you're a non-English speaker in an English country. People don't give a fuck about learning your language.
Yeah.
Something about living in Denmark that was so interesting to me would be that someone would come up and talk to me, assuming that I was Danish. I mean, I'm Caucasian at least, or whatever. So they're just like, oh, and they just walk up, and start talking to you.
Yeah.
And then until I got a grasp of the language, there, oftentimes I would be like, I'm so sorry, I only speak English, and then they would say, I'm sorry for assuming that you spoke Danish. I was like, if this same situation played out in the United States, nobody's fucking apologizing to you for not speaking whatever language it is you're speaking. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna be like, learn, like literally, like Americans will be like, learn English.
Yeah.
You want to be here, learn our language. I'm like, and that's to a degree kind of true, but it's also like just having someone apologize to me for assuming that I would speak the language of the country that I'm living in was insane. You know, and you also have this phenomena, I think, of people having like an English name and whatever their native name is. So my friend, his name is Magnus, which is often pronounced Magnus in English or in Norwegian, but in Danish the G is soft, so Magnus.
Yeah.
And you know, he introduced himself to me in English as Magnus, and I was like, dude, you should make me call you what your fucking name is. Like, you don't have to change what you're called based on like being polite to a person who doesn't speak your language. It's just weird.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's wrong, but it was just such a strange experience to have.
Yeah.
Where like people were so accommodating to, oh, you know, we're just, they're very, like, Danish people are very welcoming on the surface, and then kind of like on a personal level, they're not going to get too close to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not even because you're a foreigner. That's like part of the Scandinavian culture is just being very insular.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you spend a lot of time alone in your apartment during the wintertime. You don't go out. So they're just not the most social people in the world, which was a culture shock for me coming from the American Southeast. Dude, like we talk to everybody. You can't drive the car down the road. If you see another car on the road, you have to wave at them.
Mm-hmm.
You're a dickwad if you don't like acknowledge every single person you see. If you're at the grocery store buying groceries, you're having a conversation with the cashier while they're checking you out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you doing? Are you okay? You know, like, oh my goodness, you know, let me tell you a story or whatever the fuck. And nobody gets mad if that conversation holds up the line, even. It's just part of the culture. And then living in some place where that's like not a thing you do.
Yeah.
So strange. So strange. It's considered rude often in Danish culture to ask someone how they're doing. Like, how are you? Is a rude question to ask. It's like invasive. It's like,
Holy shit.
why would you ask me that? And to me, it's like that's a requirement in every conversation is to ask someone how they're doing.
Like,
But I think, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that, you know, that's so common, at least in other cultures, right? The first thing you would say, you know, how are you doing? You know, is everything, you know, if the person is going through something, you know, is everything all right or something like that? That would never cross my mind. This idea that I would be invading their life or something. You know, I find it funny.
It's a culture thing. It's also, I think, a socialism thing, which is neither here nor there. But it's like, I pay my taxes. I know that every single other person in this region has everything that they need provided to them based on the taxes we pay and the services we provide.
Yeah.
So if you grow up with that assumption, you don't have this reason to be like concerned about like, hey, do you have everything you need? Are you okay? Do you need to talk to somebody or whatever the fuck? You know, you don't have that concern because you just assume that's taken care of. The state takes care of that. And I think for where I grew up, it was much different. No American should ever be assuming the government is going to do anything for them at all. Like,
Same here.
do not think that, that the government's going to have your fucking back. You know, you better have somebody else in your life, hopefully several people who actually care about you enough to fucking drag you out of a hole if you end up in one.
Yeah.
You know, it's not uncommon at all for if someone like if there's a rainstorm and someone gets off the road or something like that, and then like some dude in a truck is gonna pull up and ask you, hey, can I help you? And drag you out and get you back on the road. Or if your tire blows, somebody is gonna help you. In Denmark, I can't tell you the number of times that I have been walking through the snow down the highway and not one single person stopped to be like, are you okay? And I'm like, it's not because I expect it of them, but it's just like you see a grown man walking through the snow in the middle of the winter and you don't even think like maybe that guy needs some help. Maybe he needs a ride.
Yeah.
But they just wouldn't talk to a stranger, you know, which is, it's okay. I'm not criticizing Scandinavian culture. I'm just saying it's what's different between where I grew up and what I experienced there.
Oh yeah. No, and you know, about this thing about helping people. Very recently, my mom had to call an ambulance for someone, like very close to where we live. I don't know what the person was going through, but she was basically like on the floor. I think she was either coughing or throwing up. I think she was throwing up, right? So she wasn't in a good state at all, and she needed help. Some people just like knew that she was there and didn't do anything. And my mom, the only reason that my mom knew is because someone else here told her, hey, there's this person, lying on the floor. I think I don't know what she's what she has. And then, my mom went through the trouble of calling an ambulance and stuff, and trying to help her as much as she could. And she was telling me the whole story, because I was just sitting here. I didn't know what was going on. And then she told me the whole story and how she was very impressed with how a lot of people just don't care. If you're dying, like only if you have one person helping you, that person is an angel. Everyone else, and I'm not saying this to judge people as like, oh, everybody's an asshole. That's not my intention here. It's just that a lot of people don't know what to do. That they don't know what to do. They don't know how to act in that situation. They're not prepared for it, or maybe they have some trauma, some past trauma that they haven't gotten over. And when they see someone suffering like that, they remember something from their past, a bad memory, and that makes them go crazy. So they try to avoid it, right? There's a lot of reasons why in situations like that, people just decide to not help. But obviously, that doesn't mean that we should just like understand and not say anything about it. We should talk about it. We should try to help people. If you see someone crying in the street alone or something like that, like you can offer them, hey, can I, is everything all right? Can I give you some water? Do you need any directions or something like that? Like just go and lend a hand. Just try to be a good person to someone. You don't.
Yeah.
You don't know
It's
what
just
you're
a
gonna
shame
get.
because I feel like empathy is something that's like diminished within us. I don't know why that is. Like for example, like a couple of days ago, I was driving to Phoenix and back, and we stopped at a gas station, and there was like a couple who were literally like having a fight in the parking lot, and like this woman just like drives off and leaves the guy there, and we're on a timeline. We're trying to get to the airport,
Yeah.
and my girlfriend, who's the sweet, like she's the most likely to like help anyone at all that seems like they need help, period. And she's like, are you okay? And all this kind of shit. And I'm like, don't get involved. No, for all I know, that dude just smacked the shit out of that girl. Like, I don't know. And it's not, but the instinct to just be like, hey, this person probably needs help is such a beautiful thing that I don't think a lot of people, or at least the majority of people, don't necessarily even think about. It's not a fault on them. It's almost like empathy is like a sense. So, like, we have sight, smell, touch, taste, hearing, and then somehow empathy is not something that's universal for everybody.
Yeah.
I try to like be patient with people who don't think about that kind of stuff, and it's not because I think that they're bad or that they're inconsiderate. It's more like,
Oh yeah.
imagine if you had a blind person or a deaf person, whatever, you would not expect them to see or hear something that they couldn't see or hear. So if they don't have that natural sense of like other people's emotions registering to them as important, they just don't have it.
Yeah.
That's so strange, but it's something I've had to like grow to understand. I think I was born naturally very empathetic.
Yeah.
My mother has told me that like I would always be like really attuned to emotions. If I'm having a conversation with somebody, I'm reading their body language, I'm hearing their tone, and I'm taking all of that into consideration. Like, how do I act with this person?
Yeah.
And a lot of people simply don't get that. And a big argument you could make is it's an autism thing.
Yeah.
Because that's not, I'm not a fucking psychologist, of course, but I'm just saying that like a lot of what autistic people struggle with is social cues, like reading body language, understanding tone, understanding like someone's feelings. because it just isn't present in the way that their brain works. Like it's not a consideration,
Oh yeah.
which is not. It doesn't mean that that's a bad person. It just means it's a person who is lacking a sense.
Yeah, that makes sense because I have a friend, and that she went through this whole test to find out if she was autistic or not, and it came out positive. So she is autistic, and then she told me her whole story basically, even from when she was a kid to the adult that she is now. A lot of things I didn't know about autistic people at all. So I learned a lot about that from her telling me the whole story. What usually autistic people do, and also we cannot forget that there's very different degrees of autism, right? Some people have a higher degree than others. Some people share the same traits. Some people don't, and they're autistic as the same way. So you cannot just look at a certain behavior and say, "Oh, that person is autistic," like right out of the gate. There's a lot of different factors that come into play, right?
The way it's done is there's a book called the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual. And they come out with a new one every so many years.
Yeah.
This is for every psychological disorder that could be. And the criteria, like it literally like lists symptoms. And it's like you have to meet X number of these symptoms in order to be legally diagnosed with this disorder or condition or whatever you want to call it. I don't like to use the word disease.
No, I don't think it's a
It
disease
seems like
either.
I'm saying like
I don't see
sick,
it that way. Yeah.
It's more like it puts you in a category so that people can manage their expectations. So if you happen to be, I don't know, have what they call bipolar disorder, or you happen to have autism, or you happen to be any potential psychological diagnosis at all, so depression, anxiety,
Yeah.
you just have to meet the criteria.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent. That's how it's done.
No,
that's how they do it.
No, that's okay. It's a very interesting topic to talk about, so we can understand people better. I have a friend, another friend actually, that has bipolar disorder. He told me about that, and then he explained to me.
It's rough.
He explained that it's rough because sometimes you're in a let's say very depressive state, and then the next day you're just fine. It's like nothing happened. He has it's like it changes, right, from time to time. And so sometimes he tells me, "Oh, I've been very depressed and stuff like that." And then other days he's like very motivated. And and I don't know if it has to do with his condition or anything, but he is a guy that he is interested in so many subjects, right? He knows a lot about so many things. So he can talk about with different people about what they love to do as much as anybody else. And so he knows a lot about localization because I've been working with him for 2 years now, and I gave him a lot of feedback. I basically mentored him, right? And
good on you for doing that too, for taking somebody under your wing, like helping him out.
Yeah, the reason that I helped him out was because he told me, hey, I want to do something, like chase this career and see what comes out of it. And I told him, hey, this is a very serious career. Are you sure you're ready? I might give you serious feedback or negative feedback and stuff like that. Are you ready for that? And he's like, yeah. And so this has been going on for 2 years. Because he was the one that actually approached me to talk about it. So it was very, very nice of him, very commendable to do that. And he's a programmer. And if you are a translator and a programmer at the same time, you have a huge advantage, dude. Because, for example, if you understand regular expression, right? If you're a programmer, you know what that is. If you're a translator and you know how to use regular expression, you can, for example, I have a text file,
and there's a lot of code in that file, but there's also the text that I have to translate, right? There's the translatable text and a lot of tags and code that I should not mess with. Otherwise, I'm going to break the game or make the game crash or something, right? And so you need to import that file into a cat tool. If you're going to import a file that the cat tool doesn't know its structure, doesn't know the format, for example, there's a cat tool called MemoQ, and you can use regular expression to tell the cat tool, hey, this is translatable text. Hey, this is code. You're going to leave that out. You're not going to mess with that otherwise you're going to break the file, right? So I don't know much about regular expression. I tried to study it. It's too much for my brain. I'm almost giving up, but I'm going to try again sometime. And he just like, oh, I love regular expression. I'm like, seriously? Like, yeah. Okay. So yeah, I need help with this. And so I gave him, there's these tags and this file right here, can you give me a regular expression for that? It's like, yeah. And then he would give me one. I would apply that regular expression argument into the cat tool, and it would work. And I was like, this guy is a fucking genius. This is exactly what I need. So every time that I need to work on a project that I need this very technical assistance, he's the first person that comes to mind because he knows that shit. And this is also something that a lot of people can take as a tip. If you show people what you do, you're gonna people are gonna open doors for you. Unexpectedly, that's gonna happen. And so when he said that to me, I was like, then help me with this other project. I'm not gonna give out any details because nothing is set in stone. I don't want to make any promises that I cannot keep, so I'm not gonna give you any details about that project. Nothing about an NDA or anything. But if this goes through, I'm gonna be so excited to work on this and have him on my team. And he's actually, in a way on my team. And another person that I invited to join me on this project worked on GZ Doom and Raze. So that's another thing. And this,
I'm a huge fan of both.
Oh, I'm a huge
Raze is one of the coolest games. It's like such an unsung game.
Raze?
Nobody ever.
No, that's not a game. That's a surf sport.
Oh, I thought you meant. Okay, so there's a game called Raze, which is RAYZE, that was published by Hyperstream.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I meant the surf sport. I meant GZ Doom and Raze. Both of them are surf sports, right? And so this other guy, his nickname is Nego Strike, and he translated pretty much 90% of all the GZ Doom's content and Raze's content. Not only the source port strings, but the game strings. So all games, Doom, Doom 2, Final Doom, Heretic, Hexen, even fucking Chex Quest, Heretic. Mm-hmm. I said that, Heretic. Duke Nukem 3D, Blood, Shadow Warrior, everything. He translated everything, even the text strings from Redneck Rampage. And that translation was so good. Because it's a redneck game, right? And so he needed to
offends me.
What? I'm sorry?
Redneck Rampage is racist and it offends me.
Yeah, but it's a very comedic game. And I think I'm one of the people that actually enjoys it, even though the gameplay might be a bit rough sometimes. When it comes to level design and how comedic the game is, I mean, the game has its charm, for what it was in 1997. And so translating a game like that is not an easy feat, right? And so he did that. And he had, he consulted the terminology that you would use for a redneck person in Brazil. So he really localized the game. When you pick up an item in the game, moonshine or something like that, and he would actually adapt that using words that we use here. And I was like, oh my God, this translation is so good. And this was done by a volunteer. And I contacted the guy to interview him on my podcast. And that was 2 years ago, I think. And I said to him, hey, I'm working on this other project. I don't know if it's going to become a reality or not, but I want you to help me out. You're the best person for that. And so he accepted. And then I found out that the guy lives like next to me. Like he lives in another city that is close to mine, right? I live in Canoas. He lives in Porto Alegre. Porto Alegre is the capital of Rio Grande do Sul. Canoas and Porto Alegre are pretty much very close to each other, right? It's like a 20-minute car ride until I get there, right? So I could like meet this guy in person if I wanted to. I know other few people, other translators that are like from Canoas and even Porto Alegre, and I found that out. Like, I met them online first, and then I found out, oh my God, we live in this big country, and it just so happens that you live close to me. Like, that's so wild, you know. It always gets me, you know. And so yeah, basically he was just being himself. You know, he knew that a lot of people wouldn't even play those games in Portuguese to begin with, but I saw his work and I was like, I have to find out who this guy is. And then I went to the Z-Doom forums of all places. For people that don't know, Z-Doom and GZ-Doom are basically like this family of source ports, which are basically enhanced engines to play old computer games, right? And then you can get the source, like the source code of these games, and you can adapt the source code to run on very different, on modern platforms, modern operating systems, and even port them to different consoles if you want to, right? So there's the Z-Doom family of source ports, there's the Raise family of source ports and stuff like that. And so he translated not only those source ports themselves, but also the games that those source ports support, right? And he did an amazing job. And so I went to the Z-Doom forums and I found the guy. And so I sent him a private message through the forum, right? Which is something that I don't usually do. I just could not find any other way to contact the guy. It had to be through a private forum message. Like that is so uncommon. And he actually got back to me and accepted the invitation. And so I invited him to my Discord server, and we started talking. And then he told me that he was from Rio Grande do Sul as well. I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. And then we just talked and talked. And I'm like, hey, I have to work with this guy someday. Like, you meet these people, like, don't keep in contact with them. Try, you know, if you get a big project, if you find something big to work on, you might not be able to handle everything by yourself. So if you know other people, you know, give them a chance. Like, other people gave me a lot of opportunities. I wouldn't be where I am today if it was just me, right? And I remember, you know, back when you interviewed me in 2020, I said that, oh, it was all me. I got here because, you know, I was driven and stuff like that. And nowadays, I find that very selfish from me. Back then, you know, I didn't have, I wasn't as mature as I am today. So nowadays, I see that I have to be thankful. Oh, Alex got.
It's okay.
Oh, he's gonna be back in a minute. There he is. So yeah, that was basically what I have to say about just trying to find what you do best, and people might give you a chance. And if they don't find you, you can find them. You know, just tell people. You know, talk to people, tell them what you do, even if it's just a friend. You know, I told Tyler here what I did for a living. And so he was very interested. We recorded a podcast episode in 2020, and we're still friends 4 years later. I like his podcast. I enjoy his show. He knows that my shows exist, but I don't know if you listen. At least like a few.
I've listened to the ones that were in English.
In English, yeah. There's like 4 now, I think, in English. So there's some content there. I might get other people from around the world as well to record other episodes, but yeah, we'll have to see about that. But yeah, you know, look at, you know, just these basic interactions that we have with each other. Look at where we are now.
Thank you for listening to In the Keep. Please consider taking a moment to leave a review, comment, a like, and subscribe on your listening platform of choice. It really helps. It's greatly appreciated. If you really love the show and want to see it grow, consider supporting us via Patreon. Supporters get episodes early, exclusive content and updates, chances to ask questions to guests, access to In the Keep's video games, and whatever else I can do for you. Every little bit helps. This podcast directly supports my ability to do what I love the most and to take care of my growing family. You can find links to everything that I'm talking about here over at inthekeep.com. Thank you, bless you, and enjoy the show.
Like, it's so crazy to think about that.
Everything in life works that way, man. It's like this whole social network web, networking is the word we often use, but it's like you never know. You never know what someone you meet is going to mean to you later. Like, it's never something you can really predict. I mean, you might meet a girl at a fucking house party, and then 5 years later, you might be married to that girl.
Oh yeah.
You don't know. Like it might be just like you might not like somebody when you meet them, and then later find out that they're like the best person you've ever fucking met. Some of my best friends are people who I like wanted to fight when I met them. Like, I want to fuck you up. Like, I hate your fucking attitude. I don't like the way you're talking to me and all that kind of shit. And then years later, they're like, oh, dude, we're best friends. Like, and it's oftentimes it's because like we had that interaction. It's like, I don't like you. We need to talk. Like, you need to fix your shit. And then they're like, oh, I didn't realize that I came across that way. And then you end up having a conversation, and the next thing you know, you're fucking best pals years down the road. It doesn't.
Yeah.
You got to always be open-minded to whatever people are going through.
Oh, I was treated like that once when I went to São Paulo to meet a few friends. One of them basically mistreated me, like saying, I don't give a fuck about what you think, stuff like that. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I looked at my other friends, and they were like, oh, no, that's just his way, he's like that, and stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay, I'll give him a chance. And it's like, but later I found out that it was all a joke. Like, he says it in a very serious manner that you actually believe that he's being rude to you, but you just like, sometimes he can't control himself, and that's just how he deals with some people. And he thought that, that guy's my friend, so I'm just gonna say to him, fuck you, I'm gonna fuck you, and stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay, that was unexpected. It's the first time that I actually talked to this guy face to face, and this is what is coming across, right? But after that, I was like, oh, this guy's all right. I'm gonna give him a chance, and now, we might get a chance to work together someday. I don't know. I hope that we do. I have so many friends. Like, I met so many people, dude. When I started being a translator, so many people.
It's one of those things that's like a lot of people's communication, like the way that they measure another person when they meet them, is to see how far they can push you before you push back. And that's like, I want to know that so that I can or cannot measure. If someone starts a conversation with you like, "Sup, bitch? I don't fucking like the way you look."
Yeah.
And then you go, "I don't like the way you look either, motherfucker." They might say like that. That might be exactly the reaction they were looking for. They're just like, "Oh, you're cool. Like you stand up for yourself." I would have respected you less if you had just let me push you around. Now I know we're cool. And that's not necessarily a healthy thing to do, but it is certainly common, especially amongst men. I mean, I'm not even going to get into how girls talk to each other because that's a whole different. But especially amongst men, it's like it's not like I hate you. It's like I want to know where we stand with each other.
Yeah.
And that goes back to like chivalry, even before that. I mean, like, two knights on horseback with fucking iron suits on or whatever, like. And then they come up and do the whole salute thing, and it's like, oh, you trying to fuck around right now? You trying to get jousted, motherfucker? you trying to get smacked? You trying to get in a sword fight? And they're like, nah, dude, for real, I'm just trying to get to like this castle. I gotta go save a princess from a dragon. He's like, oh, me too, bro. Yeah, it's all good. Like, high five, move on. But you want to know where you stand with somebody when you meet them, and that's perfect. I think that's perfectly normal part of human interaction.
Yeah, I understand. Being not feeling very comfortable with that. The reason that I gave the guy a chance was because there were other people there, and they told me, that's just how he is. I was like, okay, because if I think that if I was in a one-on-one interaction with him and nobody else, I would have like just looked at him in a different way and not say anything. Because if something bothers you, you should not laugh. Because some people laugh because they want to keep the peace, right? They don't know how to react most of the time. But if I think it's okay if you don't like the way someone treats you. It doesn't matter if you know them or not. Because some people, like you said, they might be testing you, right? They might see if you stand up for yourself and stuff like that. But some people don't think that way. And so you might even like make other people distance themselves from you. You might push people away because of this. Oh, I'm gonna see if they stand for themselves or whatnot. Yeah, you might be pushing people away, and then people are gonna talk shit behind your back, and and then other people are not gonna give you a chance to actually meet you. This can become dangerous in a way. So I don't do that, and some people might. I actually don't agree with that. You should like try to make a good first impression, because we're all about good first impressions. We're not gonna treat people like shit because we're testing them out. Not everyone is gonna pick up that thing, right? So I have been treated a few times like that, and my reaction was always like, this guy's a dick. I'm out. This is my reaction, whether people like it or not. If I'm on one-to-one interaction with you and you start treating me like shit out of nowhere without even knowing who I am, and I don't even know who you are, I was like, okay, you gave me a bad first impression. I don't want, if this is how you started, my thought process is going to be, if this is how you started the conversation, this is how it will end. It will stay that way. That's just how I see it, right? So I avoid the rest of the interaction. And if you don't try to stop me,
language and
if you don't try to stop me, then I'm like, oh, okay, he didn't try to stop me because that's just who he is, and he's not even apologizing or anything. So okay, I'm not gonna waste my fucking time. That's just how I see it. It might have been a good person in the beginning, and like since the beginning, and I didn't give them a chance. But it just works different for me. Something that they might not expect.
Let's take like a quick 5 minutes. So I'm gonna go to the potty, probably grab a drink.
All right,
and then.
All right. Yeah.
I'm not gonna stop the recording, so just try not to fart or do anything first.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to get a little bit deeper into like what your experience is translating like the specific games that you've done. Like you did Warsaw, Warfork, you've done stuff, a lot of voluntary stuff, like just to get your name out there, or because you cared about the community and everything. That's really generous of you, but like where did that come from?
So basically it all started when I always wanted to help in the video game industry in some way or another. But I didn't know how to, because I didn't know how to make textures or sounds or modeling, level design.
That's me too.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Like I didn't know how to do anything. And I used to like frequent the WordSource forums when they were still up. Mm-hmm. They are not up anymore, unfortunately. But when they were still up at the time, I saw this topic called this thread called help us translate the game. I was like, oh, this might be interesting. At the time I didn't know anything about localization at all. This was back in 2015, January 2015. And so I was like, oh, and I clicked there, I read the whole instructions, and my language was not listed there. But in the topic it said, hey, if your language is not listed, you can suggest it to us. We will add it to the project, and then you can start working on it. I was like, okay, can you guys add Brazilian and Portuguese? I've never done this before, so I might need some help. I don't know. And I was the only one who actually got to do that for Warsaw. And so, you have to create an account on this website called One Sky, and it's a cat tool. At the time, I didn't even know what a cat tool was. But I created my account there. I opened the project and saw like there are two columns, like the English column and the translation column. You insert your translation there. You can add comments to each segment, each string, and the developers can answer your comments or your questions. For example, what is the context of this particular string? How how it shows up in game and stuff like that, because you don't always have visual context, right? In this case, we had, because the game was already out, and everything that we were translating was basically stuff that was already added to the game, so we could just like launch the game and see for ourselves, and so we could have an idea of how the text would show up in game, how we would have to go about adapting all of that into Brazilian Portuguese. And like I said, it was me at the time. I was so excited when I started doing that, because I just found fun to do all of that, and the game didn't have a lot of like a huge word count. Like, it's an arena FPS, which is, for those of you that don't know, it's basically a boomer shooter that it's focused on multiplayer. So think of a game like Doom or Quake that is focused on multiplayer with intense action. You can carry a lot of guns. Most of the time, there is no regenerating health. There's advanced movement mechanics, bunny hopping and rocket jumping, stuff like that. And Warsaw is basically like an open source Quake 3 clone. Or rather a CPMA clone. Like, a CPMA is a Quake 3 mod. Like a very pro mod. And Warsaw was basically that, but instead of being a mod, it was a game. And I had a lot of fun with that game. Yeah.
It's it's non-Euclidean movement. So, just to kind of like touch base on, because I know that a lot of the audience is not going to understand that.
No, that's fine.
Imagine so moving across in a digital world. Every single thing you do, just like in the real world, is based on like units, but in the digital world, it's based on like square or cubic in the 3-dimensional world units. Like, this is the coordinate you're at.
Yeah.
If you are moving in Quake 3 specifically, in a normal fashion, you go forward, you go side to side. But if you're moving in a strafe, as in like at a nearly 45-degree angle from the point that you're standing at to the diagonal of the cube.
Yeah.
Or of the square, however way, whatever works for you visually. If you're moving diagonally, you're technically moving a larger distance in the same amount of time. So if you go, like, if you're listening to this or whatever, like, look at your keyboard.
Yeah.
And imagine you're going from the bottom of a key to the top of a key. It is not the same distance as from the bottom right of the key to the top left of the key, or from the bottom left of the key to the top right of the key. So if you're strafe jumping, you will move faster than you would if you were moving in a direct straight line.
Yeah.
And that is just like an accidental phenomenon that came up in Quake that has been adapted upon. And then to give a little bit more history there, Quake 3 is probably the quintessential Quake game. There was a mod for that, as you said, called CPMA.
Yeah.
And what it did was, instead of using the strafe jumping technique, it's like it allows you to kind of move in a curve. And moving in a curve, you cover even more distance than you do going straight across the cube. So as you go left and right and drift, you're actually gaining speed.
Yeah.
Even though you're only encountering the same number of units crossed. That sounds really good. Now that I've actually said that out loud,
it's kind of complicated when you don't visualize it, but yeah, what you said is correct. And also, in CPMA, like what you described is basically bunny hopping. When you jump and when you make curves in the air, those air curves that you do are called air strafe. And so when you air strafe, you gain speed. And that mechanic was part of Quake 1 when it released in 1996. And the strafe jumping mechanic, which is actually not really a mechanic, it's basically an accident, kind of like an exploit.
Well, it was an accident, and then it became
part of the game.
Cool.
It became part of the game.
Yeah.
Like
now you have to have it.
In the game's identity. If you take that out, you kill the game, right? And then strafe jumping began in Quake 2, and you cannot bunny hop in Quake 2. As much as you try, it doesn't work. But you can strafe jump. And in Quake 3, it's also the same. You can only strafe jump. But with this mod, the CPMA mod, like, it changes a lot of stuff gameplay wise. Like, it completely rebalances the game. But it adds air strafing to the game. So you can bunny hop and strafe jump. So you can, like, if you go like in a straight line, you can strafe jump. If you have to turn, you bunny hop. And so you can go a lot faster in that. So basically, what we're saying is that Warsaw, or Warsaw, whatever you want to call it, is CPMA, but instead of being a mod, it's a full-fledged game. And it's an open source game. So everyone...
Another thing that it does is that the game's levels and like geometrics are designed for this movement style,
Yeah.
as opposed to Quake, which was like, it was not a consideration.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of CPMA like mods, like people that make maps for that. You might see some of this, but in Warsaw, like you will have curved ramps or whatever,
Yeah.
or walls that are specifically meant for you to utilize this mechanic. So it's like they took it and they made it part of the game, not an unfortunate accident that you can exploit. It's like, if you don't know how to use the advanced movement in Warsaw or Warfork, you will not be successful against an opponent.
Yeah.
Whereas in Quake, it was more like the people who figured out how to strafe jump by accident had an advantage simply because they figured it out. That's what I was trying to say.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, after people figured all of that stuff out, they started playing, making maps and mods around those accidents, those happy accidents, as, Bob Ross would call them. God, rest his soul. And so what I was saying is that since this game is an open source game, everybody that contributes to it is a volunteer. And for the localization process, it was the same thing. So I got in the project, I translated it. It took me a day to do that. And then the next day when I finished it, I was like, maybe I should review my text, see if it's actually any good, if something slipped through the cracks, if I made a mistake. And so I did that for the rest of the day. So I basically finished the whole translation in like 2 days, right? Because it's not a text heavy game. And then I told them, hey, I've finished it. How should I go about testing it? It's like, oh, we have this new, this beta build. I think it was kind of like a beta build. And you can test your translation like this. And then, I have to type this console command and stuff like that. They gave me all the instructions, the technical stuff. And so I did that. And then I saw my translation on screen. And I will never forget that feeling. When you work on something and you actually see it on the screen and you know that other people will enjoy the game more because of that, that is a feeling that I just cannot describe. It's like, it's true happiness right there. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And I'm actually being useful in the gaming world for once. I think I found my true calling here. And so I was just looking for other games to do the same. And then I found Zonotic. And yeah, Zonotic was the second arena FPS that I translated. And it has a lot more words than Warsaw and Warfork. A lot more. Like more than 8,000, I think.
We used to run a lot of Zonotic tournaments In the Keep. It was just like we're getting paid to do it, and it was really, really nice. It's such an interesting game. It's not one that I ever personally really got into, but like just seeing the mechanics that they use and the movement style that they use and everything is very, very interesting and very cool game. It's such a shame that it's not more popular.
Oh, it's really a shame. I know a Brazilian guy that hosts a server in Brazil to this day. And there are also like other 2 or 3 Brazilian servers. And sometimes I go there and there are people playing, actually. And which is actually kind of a miracle. And I really enjoy Zonotic. And there's only one thing that I don't like about it, is that it features regenerating health. But it doesn't do it in the same way as other modern games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, and stuff like that. Like if you're very low on very low HP, it regenerates faster. But as it regenerates your health, it starts going slower. So the more health you have, the slower the regeneration. And you still have to look for health pickups around the map. So maybe they did that to ease the game a little bit for new players. I don't know the reasoning behind it, but the game is still very fast paced and very unique in a lot of ways. For example, the weapons in Zoonotic I think what makes the game unique is its weapons. The way the game does is that every weapon has a secondary fire mode, kind of like in Unreal Tournament, right? And you can combine both fire modes and even make weapon combos. Like you shoot with a weapon, and it's faster to switch to another instead of waiting for your weapon to reload. So, for example, if you have a rocket launcher and a grenade launcher, in the game is the mortar. The mortar is basically the grenade launcher. So you have the rocket launcher and the grenade launcher, right? If you shoot a rocket, it takes less time to switch to the grenade launcher and fire it instead of waiting for your rocket launcher to reload itself. So this basically incentivizes you to do weapon combos. So you keep switching between the weapons as you shoot. It's really fun. I love when games encourage you to do that. Like there are a lot of boomer shooters that encourage you to do weapon combos. It's really fun. There's also like the railgun, which is I think it's the vortex, that when you shoot, like you have to wait for your shot to charge, right? For the shot to charge. If it's not charged 100%, it doesn't deal full damage. And I think the full damage is around 80. So if you like wait until like half of the charge, you might deal like 40 or 50 damage. So if you want to shoot your enemy more times, you will deal less damage per shot if you actually hit the guy. But if you actually wait to charge your shot, you will do more damage, basically. So that's another thing about the game. It's like this encourages you to spam, basically, unless it's a necessity. So you have to think about that. Like there's a lot more strategy when it comes to using the weapons in Zoonotic compared to other arena shooters. So I think that's one of the things that makes the game really fun. Another thing is that even though the game has the rocket jump mechanic, you just shoot a rocket at your feet, jump at the same time, and you fly towards the map, towards higher, right? You're not encouraged to do that because there is a weapon specifically designed to jump around the map, which is I think is the blaster, right? The first weapon you have, you always spawn with it. So if you shoot the ground or a wall, you just get boosted to the other side, and it's actually more effective than a rocket jump, and it deals way less damage. So you really don't have to rocket jump in the game unless it's like very situational. Most of the time, you just pull out your blaster, shoot, and then just like fly around the map like you can do in Warsaw, right? It's just so fun.
I remember when I first realized that you could basically pistol jump in Doombringer.
Yeah.
And it was the same type of thing. It was like, I've been trying to use the rocket launcher this whole time. Like I could have just made that jump with the pistol, dealt myself way less damage. For anybody in the audience listening, like a rocket jump in one of these games that we're talking about would be like you literally point a rocket launcher at your feet and you use the explosion to propel you in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah.
So if you want to jump up, onto a ledge or across a room or just and you're in the middle of a firefight, you have to make the mental calculation yourself. Is it worth the damage I'm going to take in order to move myself to this new position?
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of mental calculus going on when it comes to being a great quick player, which I'm not, unfortunately. Probably never will be now. But yeah, it's so crazy. Like, I just want you to take a moment, like you and me right now, to like really consider.
Yeah.
Imagine someone has no idea what we're talking about. Like they've never played any of these games.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't even play video games, and they joined this podcast because they're hearing us talk about linguistics and like translation, localization.
Yeah.
And then we're just casually talking about Quake and Zoonotic and Warsaw and shit. They have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
It'd be like trying to explain chess to somebody who never played chess before. Like it's actually far more complicated than chess because it's fast. There's physics involved.
Yeah.
It's not two-dimensional.
Yeah. And
I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And even around the community,
people compare arena FPS to chess a lot. But it's basically fast-paced because you have to think about where your enemy is gonna spawn, how much damage he took, where he's going around the map, where he's positioned, which item they're gonna grab. You have to time when the items are gonna spawn because different items have different respawn times. Some items respawn after 25 seconds. Some items respawn after 30 seconds. And so when you pick them up, you have to look at it at the time and make the calculations. 30 seconds from now, this mega health is going to spawn again. So I have to position myself to take that item before my enemy does. So I have the upper hand. There's a lot of things.
And it depends also on the map you're playing.
Yeah.
Like that's a big thing that I think is hard to explain to an outsider. It's like, a chessboard is a chessboard. Every single time you play it's exactly the same. Now imagine a 3-dimensional chessboard that is always going to be different every time you play it. Like you might have played on this particular map 100 times, 2,000 times. I mean, in my case, like I'm very confident. I haven't played Quake in probably over a year.
Mm-hmm.
If you played me on Blood Run right now, I am certain I would beat you. But
yeah.
it's not because I'm a great Quake player. It's because I know that map
inside out
so intimately.
Yeah.
Like I know I could probably close my eyes and walk through that map.
Yeah, me too. I know that map a lot. And for those of you that don't know, Blood Run is a community map that was basically recreated in almost every arena shooter that you can think of. I mean, imagine Dust 2 in Counter-Strike, right? Dust 2 is recreated in a lot of games. If there is a map editor for a game or an SDK, people will recreate Dust 2. The same thing, it's the same thing with arena shooters. You have classic maps like Blood Run, and you have Campgrounds from Quake 3. You have Aerowalk from, I think it was in Quake 1? I don't remember the first game.
Aerowalk, I believe, came along after Quake 1 and it was retroactively introduced into Quake.
Okay. Yeah.
But now it is considered like a standard map. Like if you're having a tournament for Quake World, it's one of the standard maps, even though it was created after the fact and by a community.
Yeah, most of the community maps are what people play nowadays for arena shooters. If you play Quake 3, there's a lot of official maps, but we have to be honest. Most of them, people just don't play on them because they're not really that good. If you go to the community, like there are so many good maps out there. If you go to Quake Live, which is basically like the updated version of Quake 3 that runs on modern systems and stuff like that. It used to run on a browser. Remember that? That was a long time ago.
I was going to say the original appeal was that it ran on the browser.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I guess it was when they released it on Steam that it became like kind of it's just Quake 3 Plus, essentially.
Essentially, yeah. It doesn't have like the same like mod support and stuff like that as in Quake 3. But a lot more people play Quake Live nowadays. Even in South America, you can find people playing Quake Live. Mostly playing Clan Arena, which is one of the game modes that features
Can you explain what Clan Arena means to an outsider?
Yeah, basically Clan Arena. Think of it like in Counter-Strike, it's a round-based. The standard mode is a round-based game mode. If you die, you have to wait for the next round to start. In Clan Arena, it's the same thing, but you spawn with all weapons, armored up with like 100 health, 200 health, something like that. I think it depends on the game. So you have a lot of health, a lot of armor, all of the weapons, a lot of ammo, and you have to wipe out the other team in this round-based mode. So if you killed all the other opponents, you win the round, and it keeps going like that. I think it also you don't deal self damage, so you can rocket jump to your heart's content without taking damage, and that makes it really fun because then you can like rocket jump around the map and shoot like rocket jump from the ground, and then you can like shoot a rocket at a wall and then propel you forward. You can do all sorts of stuff doing that. because you don't have to worry about your health. You don't take self damage in that mode. But yeah, that's basically what Quake Live is. It's like an updated version of Quake 3. Quake 3 came out in 1999. Quake Live, I think it was, there was like an alpha or beta version, something like that, around 2008. I don't know. Would have to Google about that. But yeah, it used to be a browser game. You would have to log in into your account, and then the game would like download some files onto your computer so you could actually play the game. So your web browser would basically be your launcher. It's how you would launch the game, but you would need to have some files pre-installed on your computer. It's not all magic. And then it became a standalone game on Steam after, I think it was around 2020, or maybe I'm just going crazy. But yeah, it took like a lot of years to it become standalone. And then at the time, it was a free-to-play game with a subscription-based model. If you paid monthly, you could get like more hosting options and stuff like that. You could have host your own server and have a lot of other options there, but it wasn't a requirement to actually play the game. And then when it became standalone on Steam, it became a paid game, so you would have to actually buy the game. But if you had an account or download it or something like that, you wouldn't need to pay it again. So yeah, that's what Quake Live is. There's a lot of other boomer shooters out there, other arena shooters. I've translated a few of them. I have to check my.
Dude,
Yep.
You know Adam Pyle. He goes by Sync Error on the internet.
Oh yeah.
But he was, so he was just like a dude. He had a family, all that kind of shit. He entered into a mapping. I really want to get him on a fucking podcast one day. Like, I think he's one of the most admirable human beings I've ever seen. I don't know him that deeply, but like, we've always had a good relationship based on Quake.
Yeah.
And it's like, he entered into a contest to make a map for Quake Live.
Yeah.
Won the contest. They included his game, or sorry, his level in the actual release. And then he ends up working for id Software and designing Quake Champions himself. And I don't even know what else he does at id Software. I had to assume that's not the only thing he does. It's just like that's what he's known for.
Yeah.
But like, just think it, like, because we were talking earlier about like, you never know where like life's going to take you, what opportunities are going to come up. Like that.
Yeah.
Just being obsessed. People. I remember being a little kid and like my grandpa or my grandmother being like, "You're wasting your time playing those video games and all this kind of shit. You need to go outside."
Yeah.
And not that I didn't spend a lot of time outside, because trust me, I did. Probably way more than I actually played video games. And still to this day, that's still true.
Yeah.
But it's like, I remember, grandma and grandpa saying like, "That's a waste of time," or whatever. And then like this dude's whole career stemmed from him just being obsessed with this weird game, making a level for it, entering a contest, and now he's got a job.
Yeah.
That's like exactly what he wanted to be doing the whole time. That's amazing. That's so beautiful.
That is so beautiful. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And this is a phenomenon that has been going on for maybe 30 years. Yeah, since the 90s, people would get hired because of the maps and mods they developed. I mean,
Tim Willits was hired by id Software
for
making a community map for Doom. And then he became the designer, of some of the greatest levels of all time in Doom 2, in Quake 2 specifically. Like the Edge is one of the best arena shooter maps ever made.
Oh, for Quake 2.
Far.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then that took him like Tim. I got to get Tim on the podcast sometime, because like I worked with him a lot at 3D Realms, because he's at Saber, who owns 3D Realms now.
Yeah.
But he took his hobby of being a modder for a game, making fan levels, and now he is like the corporate overlord of Saber.
Yeah.
Like in the course of like 20 years or whatever, he went from being a guy who made a map to a guy who gets to move millions of dollars around based on how he thinks a video game is going to work out or not in its development.
Yeah.
And that is amazing. Amazing.
I love that culture. I love that because of its software and even Valve software, we have those tools provided to us so we can create that content and maybe turn that into a career. So that is so amazing. That's been happening now since the 90s. Like, people who worked, there was a guy, I don't remember his name now, but the guy that worked on Unreal's AI, the Unreal game that came out in 1998, the guy that worked on that AI worked on a bot mod for Quake 1.
Yeah.
So he worked on Quake 1, creating AI for multiplayer bots. And so I think it was Cliff Basinski at the time that found that out, or maybe it was I think it was one of the Epic employees at the time.
Keep saying names. I got to get Cliff on the podcast too.
Yeah,
I
don't remember if it was him or another employee that called him at the time and said, "Oh, we got to hire this guy. This guy made a bot mod for Quake 1, and we should hire him to make the Unreal AI." And so that's what happened. And still to this day, after 26 years, people commend the AI of Unreal, because it's like you're shooting another human being. Like, they strafe around, they jump, they try to dodge your projectiles. Like, that was so advanced for the time. And it's a game from 1998. And so
much of the software that was developed back in the mid to late 90s is still
used today.
So relevant today. It's like that no one has topped it, really. Like the AAA games industry cannot. It's almost like trying to rebuild the pyramids. Like, you really can't.
Yeah.
You don't know how they did it. Like, John Carmack went from being a dude who would basically use chemicals to break locks and steal computers to being, one of the greatest game designers of all time, one of the greatest programmers who's ever lived at id Software.
Yeah.
And then he went on to become literally a rocket scientist and to work on VR for Meta.
Yeah.
And that all just I really want to drive this home to anybody listening to the audience. Like, whatever the fuck you're interested in, just do that.
Yeah.
Just do it. Like, I was thinking about this earlier because you were talking about how we were talking about people who listen to your podcast or whatever that you meet in real life and stuff. And it's it's not just that. It's people like you, people like Ben Reichstein, who come to me and say, you inspired me to start my own podcast. My advice to anybody who doesn't want to be an engineer or a fucking doctor, don't waste your time going to school. Don't go into, especially in America, don't go into debt to go to college.
Yeah.
Start a podcast. If you're interested in something, start a podcast about that subject. Even if it doesn't get a lot of views or anything like that, the networking you're going to have is far more valuable than a college diploma. And if something so you come to me, you apply for a job at In the Keep, and I'm like, what are your qualifications? You show me your CV.
Yeah.
And it says oh, I went to school for 4 years for I don't know, programming or level design or whatever the fuck, something like that. Geometry. I don't fucking care. If you came to me and you said, here's 10,000 hours of me having one-on-one conversations with some of the greatest level designers who've ever lived, because that's what we're into, I don't need to trust your fucking piece of paper anymore.
Exactly.
Your diploma is just a college that said that you completed all the courses. If you can show me that you actually had these conversations and I could see in real time how you learned and what you learned on your podcast, that's far, far more valuable. And it's way more actual proof of what you can and can't do.
Exactly.
It's huge. And for you to see, because I got into this whole thing originally in the Keep podcast was just about arena shooters, and then it became about boomer shooters, and then it became about indie games, and then it became about fucking, I'm going to have a comedian on, and I got really sick of that, so I had to change it.
Yeah.
I always felt like I was alienating my audience if I did anything different than what I had originally set out to, but the truth is I just want to have conversations.
Yeah.
But then you starting your podcast where it's I'm going to make my own podcast. It's just about localization, and I'm going to talk to people who translate games. It's incredibly niche. Probably not the world's biggest fucking market for that.
Yeah.
Still totally worth you doing. Ben doing the Field and Foley podcast, which is part of the In the Cube network.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
InTheCube.com. So he is a sound designer, and he just goes out and finds the best sound designers in the world and starts talking to them. And it's like you have an excuse. Really, it's not just like, hey, would you mind talking to me for an hour? It's like, hey, I have a podcast about sound design, and you're a great sound designer. Would you like to? And what neither he nor I really predicted was that, sound designers don't ever get interviewed. No one ever.
Really?
How many times have you ever heard of someone interviewing the sound designer for like a fucking huge Hollywood movie? And then Ben has people on who were like talking about when they made Mad Max. When they made, like some of these great, not just games, like movies, AAA, whatever the fuck. And sometimes that's cross-platform. Like sometimes it's like a guy who's like, I do sound design for games, I do sound design for TV, I do sound design for movie, whatever the fuck. We could have never foreseen that, but since he took that leap to make that podcast happen,
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's incredible. And he's learning from talking to the best in the business. They're learning to be more open to networking. His podcast is a huge success so far. And for him to say to me, you inspired me to start my own podcast. I'm like, dude, all I ever wanted to do was just talk about fucking Quake.
yeah. Yeah, it was unexpected, and it's beautiful to see. He basically saw an opportunity to do something that other people were not doing. And so it was the same thing for me. No one was doing the same thing. And I interview translators and also voice actors as well. I interviewed a few of them. And I always try to expand and, maybe someday I will interview like owners of language service providers, or project managers. I can expand as much as I want. And I want to do that in the future. And I want to get big names, like big voice, like dubbing actors from Brazil. If one day I can do that, I know that the episode is going to blow up. Like the Sergeant Mark IV episode, which is actually a good episode. You guys should listen to it. The modder behind Brutal Doom and also Brutal Fate. Brazilian, by the way. So yeah, it's like you said, it's a good excuse because it's easier for you to convince them that they should talk to you if you have a podcast. Like it's way more of a reason because at the end of the day, you're actually helping the guy as well. Like you're helping them have a voice. You're giving them a platform. They don't have to do anything. They just have to talk to you. You're going to do the recording. You're going to do the editing and the marketing and everything. All the other guy has to do is like, I'm just going to share the episode on my Twitter or whatever, my social media accounts when the episode goes live. But everything else is the other guy's responsibility. In our case, it's my responsibility, your responsibility, Alex's responsibility. They have to do all the behind the curtain stuff. So, like, it's really hard to say no unless you're a really shy person. And I had a lot of some people, not a whole lot of people, but some people deny my invitation because my cell phone here. Deny my invitation because they felt like they didn't know how to speak publicly, or maybe they would feel not comfortable being recorded, or they're just too shy and stuff like that. I was like, okay, I have to respect that. It's a yes or no question. If it's a no, it's okay. But I always let them know that, hey, the doors are still open. If you change your mind, you can just call me. You just say, hey, that podcast, you're still interested? Yeah, I'm still interested. If I like you, I like what you do. The doors are always open. And so,
yeah.
I've
always had a strict policy of, let's say that you record a podcast with me.
Yeah.
And you regret what you said or something like that. I will take it down. Like there's so many people out there that are like, gotcha. Like Sergeant Mark IV being a good example where, people would do an interview with him and then like edit it, make him look like an asshole and then release it on purpose because they're trying to get views.
That's fun.
And I was like, no, dude, if you don't like it, I'm going to give you the recording before I publish it. And if you have any issues with it, I'll edit it out or I will take it the fuck down. I will not publish something that you're not proud of because I'm not going to be proud of that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to feel good about myself if I'm making somebody feel like they're just being exploited or like they're, like a misrepresented or anything like that. That's horrible.
Yeah.
No one should do that to anybody. And it's like, for what? For some YouTube views? For a who cares?
No, that's lack of
There's
integrity.
some real
That's lack of
there's
integrity.
some real dickwads out there in the content creation world who will absolutely do that to you.
Yeah, we're going there again. We're going
We don't have
way.
to. We don't have to go that far. But I just mean, like, don't.
Yeah, let's just leave it.
Don't be someone who just exploits people for fucking views.
Yeah, that's fucked. Yeah. No, I don't do that
It's
either.
better to have a good relationship with people and be a good person.
I had to actually take an episode down once because the guy told me, "Hey, I think I said something that was not supposed to be said because it's behind an NDA." And I was like, "Oh, okay, and he suggested to me, "Hey, let's record another episode." I was like, "You know what? Let's do it this other way. I'm gonna take the episode down. I'm gonna re-edit it. I'm gonna take all of that stuff down. I'm gonna take out all the stuff that you said that you don't want to be there. I'm gonna send you the episode again, and then you will let me know if I missed something. If I missed something, then you just tell me, and then I'll go there and edit it again. And then after that, after all the edits, I'm gonna re-upload and republish that podcast episode." It was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a better idea." And so I did that. And so I reworked on that episode because of that. And that episode was actually reworked twice. That was one of the reasons, because he said some stuff that was protected by NDA, so I had to re-edit the episode. And then a second time was because my recording was messed up. Like, my voice recording was at maximum volume. And for people that don't know how microphones work, if you do that, it's gonna fuck up the quality of your voice recording. So sometimes you have to lower it a little bit. Like, obviously, it depends on your setup. It depends on your mic. It has a lot of other factors. But for my setup, I have to record like at around 80% volume. If I record it at 100%, it fucks up the quality of my voice. And so before recording, I didn't notice that it was at 100%. So I recorded that whole episode with my voice all fucked up, right? And so when I listened to it, I was like, bro, I just refuse to just publish an episode with my voice like that. Like, that's not professional at all. At least if you compare it to the other episodes that I published where I was actually careful about that.
If you love this show and you love supporting indie video games, please take a moment to check out In the Cube's upcoming Stellar Valkyrie. Built in the GZ Doom engine, this retro first-person shooter puts you in the universe of space bird bounty hunter Falco, who is on a mission to save his ex-girlfriend from the evil Black Star cult. Just type birdgame.space, that's BIRD game.space into your browser, hit enter, and smash that wishlist button. And stay tuned. And now, back to the show.
So what I did was this. I re-recorded all of my voice lines as if I was like talking to the guy again, as if I was dubbing myself, right?
I told you about my experience with Andrew Holsholt, right?
Did you?
So
what was it like?
if I
I'm
didn't,
sorry.
I want you to finish. I want you to finish your story, but if you keep going, and then I'm going to tell you about Andrew Holsholt. If not the first time you've ever heard it, at least to talk about it in the air for once.
Yeah, I think I was finished. It's basically I had to like re-record everything that I said, obviously with a good quality now. So it was a lot of work, a lot of editing that went behind that for one episode. Yeah, because we have technical problems and stuff like that. A lot of episodes that people listen to, they don't see all that work that goes behind recording an episode. It's not just grab the recording, put a fucking intro there and an outro, and you're done with it. No, you have to edit each track. You have to cut a lot of stuff out sometimes stuff that you shouldn't even say publicly, or maybe there's a lot of coughing or a lot of
Maybe you talk shit about a very particular content creator that you don't like.
yeah, or sometimes you talk too close to the microphone all the time, and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Like, there's a lot of other reasons, a lot of things that you have to take out, to edit it out yourself, or maybe you pay someone else to do it, if you have the money to do that. And you have to do all of that for the episode to actually be comfortable to listen to, right? And so, and audio quality is also another factor. So that's why I bought this microphone in the first place. Your one is what, a Yeti? By the way.
So
yeah,
typically I use an AT2020 with a Behringer sound card.
Yeah.
But I because I just moved to Arizona, I didn't want to bring everything that I had with me from Alabama on the plane to Arizona. So I just brought the Yeti for now, and then when we go to South Carolina in a few months, for whoever's listening to this, it might already be done. But
Yeah.
We'll just swing through, grab all my stuff when we move everything, and then go on our way.
Yeah.
So that at that point, I'll have the full podcast setup, webcams, and all that kind of shit. But like for now, I'm just kind of like minimal, just what I need to get the job done. So yeah, I'm using a Blue Yeti. I've had it for years. It's not the best microphone in the world. It's really hard to like gauge what people's standards are.
Yeah.
Because it's a Blue Yeti is a perfectly serviceable microphone.
Yeah.
For a content creator of pretty much any kind. Like it's a USB, it has gain control, it has volume, it even has headphone support. You can mute it. It's an excellent USB microphone. Is it I'm throwing up my quotation marks in the air. Is it a professional microphone compared to the AT2020 with a fucking sound card? No.
Yeah.
But is the average person really going to notice the difference? Probably not.
Probably not.
It's really more about me and like my friends who really care about audio.
Yeah. I'm not a very audio technical guy, so I bought this one because it seemed good enough. It was in a good price range that I could afford at the time. It's also USB, and it fills my needs. Basically, it fulfills my needs. I might buy a new microphone at some point, but it's not just my voice. It's also like the other person's voice. Sometimes they have a shitty microphone, and there's not much you can do. Sometimes when they have a shitty microphone, what actually Buzzsprout said in a tutorial video is that, if you have an interviewee that has a shitty microphone, you can tell them, hey, can you use your smartphone instead, because that will sound better. And I was like, oh my god, I should have known that before I recorded some people with like the shittiest microphones ever. And I don't blame them for the mic that they had. It's just
usually,
the quality.
In my experience, it's not even like the fact that their microphone sucks. It's like background noise or like a lack of filtering or something like that.
Yeah.
I've had great guests who had really, really terrible microphone quality or background noise, or like they have a radiator or air conditioner in their room or a fan, whatever. And I pretty much like became an expert on doctoring audio for that reason, because I was like, I'm never going to sacrifice the conversation. But that's something that I think podcasters don't think about enough, is that you really think about what you listen to. Think about the podcast that you listen to.
Yeah.
Think about the radio shows that you listen to, where you literally have people like calling in on phones or whatever. And it's like, you have this idea in your head that everything needs to be perfect. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
It just needs to be serviceable. Like we were talking about earlier about like a translation. Like, as long as nobody's complaining, why would I change anything?
Yeah.
It is, and maybe there's a few words here and there that are like stupid or wrong or whatever, but as long as someone gets the gist of what the game is trying to tell them to do, they can still play it. As long as the podcast audio is not so bad that someone turns it off because of it annoying background noise or whatever, I'm happy. I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
That's all I need. Would I like for it to be the Lex Friedman podcast? Of course. But it's not necessary in order to be successful, or at least to just get people to not literally turn off your show.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so basically, being minimalistic nowadays works in a lot of content creation videos. Basically, for example, nowadays we have Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and you see that a lot of people make videos using their smartphone and nothing else. Like maybe they have a tripod and a cell phone, and that's all they need, and some minimalistic editing here and there, some cuts. And that's all they need. And they have like what? Hundreds of thousands of followers or something like that. Like nowadays, a lot of people realize that less is more. So that's just something we have to get used to. And you mentioned audio quality that might make you drop the podcast altogether, right? I think I told you once that I was listening to a translation podcast. I'm not going to say the name here, but the audio quality was all over the place. I could not listen to it for more than 5 minutes. It literally hurt my ears because I could notice all of those different tracks, and they were so unleveled. Like the quality was different, the volume of each track was different, so it escalated, right? And I felt uncomfortable just by listening to it. I was like, what the fuck am I listening to? Like, didn't these people at least wore headphones or ear pods or something like that to have an idea of how it would sound? Because most people use ear pods or headphones to listen to something, to music or to a podcast. And so that's why I don't use my computer speakers for that. I don't think it does it justice. Yeah.
So I personally tend to listen to podcasts while I'm running or doing stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time it was like I'm literally I'm running. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do. I absolutely love a good jog on a hot day or whatever.
Yeah.
And I would be listening to a podcast on my phone while I'm doing that. And there are standards for the output volume of phones and all that sort of thing. And as a podcaster, you need to be aware of how do people consume your product?
Yeah.
Where do they listen to it? How do they listen to it? And the assumption is generally you're at a desktop or you're on your phone, you're on Spotify, but you have headphones or ear pods or something like that.
Yeah.
At the time, now I've become a headphone person since then, but I was like, I'm not fucking putting anything on my ears. I'm running. I don't want shit falling off my head. I don't want to be adjusting this thing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to have my phone in my hand and I can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some great podcasts that were so good content wise, but had not obviously figured out the standards for audio quality.
Yeah.
I wrote a DM to Eric Weinstein about his podcast. It was just called The Portal. It's highly anybody out there who's listening to this, it's one of the best podcasts ever made, content wise. But it was obvious to me that he didn't understand, or at least his editor, whoever the fuck was putting it out, did not understand normalization.
Yeah.
Which is to say that you and I are both recording in two different locations on two different microphones. You might be louder or quieter than I am, and then when I put the two audios together, it's my job to make sure we're balanced so that it's not like a person listening to this is going to hear you shouting basically and me whispering.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. So I wrote him tons of paragraphs about what you need to do is normalize yourself to basically this number of negative number of luffs. It's just this is the podcasting standard. It will work on a phone. You don't need to have people putting in headphones to listen to you. And I'm writing you this because I just got done with a run. I was desperately trying to listen to your conversation with somebody, and I fucking couldn't hear it because it's not loud enough for my phone.
Yeah.
And that's not of course he could respond to that and say just buy a pair of headphones.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say make it as accessible as humanly possible, no matter what someone's equipment is, so that they can hear what you're talking about and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Comfortably. It's the same with games, like with UI, with anything. Like you want the lowest barrier of entry possible for whatever it is that you're trying to get people to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Because they could just be playing Fortnite.
Yeah.
Like if I'm trying to get a kid to play Quake or Doom or whatever, and I'm like, okay, well, you need to download Zdaemon, and you download this mod, you move file from your .wide over to the blah 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 blah. And at in the 45 minutes of time that it's going to take to explain that to them and get them to do it, they could have just played Fortnite for.
Yeah,
that's what we're up against.
Oh, totally. At least for the Quake side of things, Quake 1 has the N-Quake package, which comes with it comes with a source port. It comes with graphical mods.
Not to be confused with NetQuake.
Yeah, it's something completely different. But basically, N-Quake is a starter package. You download N-Quake and you're playing Quake Online. That's simple as it is, because it comes with everything, and it's totally legal because it comes with a shareware version of Quake. For those of you that don't know, shareware is basically the old term for demo. Nowadays we have game demos. Back in the 90s we had shareware, and you get like a chunk of the game for free. And if you wanted to buy the complete game, you would just like call them and mail and get the game by mail, or go to a game store. So it comes with shareware of Quake. It comes with a multiplayer source port, which is Easy Quake. Some other optional mods. It comes with an installer, so it's pretty easy to do. Like you can set your name there and set where you want to install the game, the directory and everything. Like it's so easily done, and it's very, very intuitive. And then after that, you install it. It creates a shortcut on your desktop. You just launch it and play it. There's a server browser right there, and I think that's amazing. And that package is still updated to this day, because the installer it downloads some stuff to your computer, so it's always grabbing the most updated assets and files. There's something like that for Quake 2 as well. I think that's like the Quake 2 starter or Quake 2 starter pack. I think it's from the same guys as Jahar from his website, right? I think so. Let's take a look.
Tasty Splin?
Yeah, Tasty Splin. Tasty Splin. Yeah. Quake 2 starter. Yeah, Tasty Splin. Right there. So if you want to play Quake 2, it comes with everything you need. It's not opening up for me. I think I'm gonna have to set up a VPN or something. But anyway.
So in the last, because we don't have too much more time.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, have you ever seen anything you can't explain? Like, have you ever had a metaphysical or paranormal experience of any kind?
Oh, wow.
Have you seen a UFO? Have you seen a ghost? Have you seen something you couldn't?
No, I never had an experience like that. I had a kind of scary experience when there's a name for that. I can't remember the name for this phenomenon right now, but like you're in your bed, you're laid down, right? And you sort of wake up, half wake up, you can open your eyes, but you cannot move. That's the only
sleep paralysis.
Sleep paralysis. That's the term I was looking for. Yeah. So I had that once in my life, and I kept hurting about it before I had that experience. But when it actually happened, I was like, I can open my eyes, like half open them, and then I can see my body, and I cannot move my body. And so I stayed there for 5 seconds, and then I was just jumped the bed. It's like, oh, okay, now, I can't move my body. Okay. So I was really scared. It's like, what the fuck just happened? Like, how can I open my eyes when I cannot move like that? It's
very interesting. I don't think that I've ever had sleep paralysis. I've certainly had really weird experiences, during or waking up from sleep, though. So that's one of those things that sleep paralysis comes up in so many different things. And of course, it's like a psychological thing. It's like a normal pattern of behavior that happens with people.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of it is centered around people being I woke up, I couldn't move, and then I was abducted by aliens, or I was, staring at the devil at the end of my bed, or a demon, or what. It's so interesting how like the human mind works, and it processes those things. And it's like you don't know if you're dreaming or if you're awake, so you don't know if what you saw was there or if it was just part of your mind making sense of things. It's so cool. Like it's very, very interesting. I'm sorry that happened to you, obviously, but like also
it was kind of scary.
It's fascinating.
It was kind of scary, but after that, I was like, oh my god, that's actually very interesting. I didn't even know that such a thing was possible. And you mentioned, if I have seen any paranormal activity. I think my mom saw a ghost someday when she was a kid. She told me that story, and that the ghost basically like evaporated like that, like in front of her eyes. I was like, oh, okay. So that's very scary. And I also know a few people, and some people might not believe that. I am not a religious person or a spiritual person, with that knowledge, but I know people that can see things that other people cannot see.
For sure. This is going to be a running theme on the show because I've really got to get my mom to do an episode.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother has like actually solved police cases with mediumship.
Holy shit.
She actually like, whether it's true or not, I can't prove it. I didn't experience what she experienced, but like there would be like a huge case. Like I remember there's this one time I had to get her to talk about it.
Yeah.
But this man had thrown his children off of a bridge in New Orleans, and they all drowned, of course. It was a horrible, case, but it was a very big deal in the area at the time. And like New Orleans is right next to Mobile. Like they're right next to each other. That's where I grew up. And my mom said that she had heard so they found the first two bodies.
Yeah.
And they were still searching for like I think it was the youngest girl. And then she told me that she just kind of like woke up and felt like she needed to go to New Orleans to like stand on that bridge and kind of like get a vibe for it. And I was like, that's crazy. But literally in the middle of the night, her and my stepdad got in the car and drove to New Orleans, stood on the bridge. And she said, when I was there, the little girl's voice was saying, I'm not here. I'm not here. And then she was like, okay, so they're not going to find her here. So she like had told the cops, like, you're not going to like stop wasting your time because you're not going to find her here. They found her in the Mobile Bay a few days later.
Damn.
And it was like my mom had like helped to find out how to recover this little girl's body who'd been murdered. And I did not experience this myself. It was just more like from the outside in. But like, as like you said, it is pretty apparent to me that people have experiences, and we were talking about that earlier with empathy even, but like senses that are not common, or at least everyone doesn't share.
Yeah.
Or intuitions. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a sixth sense, like in the movies or whatever. Like, but like some sort of intuition that leads them to be able to come to conclusions that you would not be able to otherwise logically.
Yeah.
And that's insane to me.
Yeah, that's insane.
Like that's so crazy. So crazy.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of stories about, people listening to dead people talk to them, finding a lot of information that they wouldn't have been able to share because they were dead and no one would be able to listen to them aside from these people with gifts, these gifted people. So I think it's amazing.
Shining.
Yeah. People like very, very, and there are also, emotional stories based around all of that. Pretty interesting stuff. I know a few people like that. Yeah, but I don't have a lot of any of those experiences myself. Never had that. I only know a few people that had those experiences, and I listen to them. And the first time that you listen to something like that in your life, you might not believe it. You might think they're lying to you. It's all bullshit. But if you keep listening to those stories from different people, different perspectives, you may start to believe that. You may see a pattern. You may see like, oh, this actually makes sense. This.
Whether or not it's actually like you saw a ghost or you were abducted by it or anything, whether or not that's literally true.
Yeah.
I am so fascinated by the sheer number of people who report the same thing, and then it's like, oh well, you can't prove it. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, what would you like me to prove? Like, how would I prove it? Photographic evidence, like some kind of radio signal. I don't know. You need to give them something that shows them like this really happened, or at least there was a phenomenon that could be measured. But it's like the nature of what you're describing is something that would be beyond our ability to detect and record. So does that mean that you're a lie? Because the biggest thing is there's a huge difference between somebody who's lying, like they've made it up for attention,
Mm-hmm.
and someone who legitimately had an experience. Maybe they're crazy. Maybe they're a little bit off. I don't know. But they did have this experience because they're clearly not lying when they say that they saw or felt or heard what they did.
Yeah.
And that's so to me that's a really easy determination to make. Like I can tell usually when someone's just making shit up versus when it's like, no, you really seem like you had this experience, or at least you believe you did. That is interesting. That's so fascinating.
Yeah, maybe like the tone of their voice or their body language might give all of that away if they're saying the truth or not. Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast earlier. It was actually Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. It's great podcast / radio show you can check out.
Yeah.
But he was interviewing this guy who was like basically saying that he had a connection with these like mantis looking aliens. And like, so that Norrie was like, can we talk to them? And he's like, yes. And he's like, I will channel them through my voice. And then the guy like, all of life is balanced. He was like speaking as if he were the aliens talking to George Norrie.
Yeah.
Now, this dude might literally just be fucking batshit crazy out of his mind. That's most likely the possibility.
Yeah.
But he didn't seem like he was lying. He seemed like he was having an experience. And because we can't measure that experience in the real world or with the tools we have, I don't know if we should just dismiss everything he says. Maybe he has a point. Maybe even if he didn't, there's no aliens. Let's say there's no mantis fucking, insectoid is the technical term I think that ufologists use.
Yeah.
None of that, let's say none of that's true. Is the message that he's bringing from these aliens that he believes that he's talking to useful? Probably.
Yeah.
Because his message was all about like we're all in the same vibration, we're all supposed to love each other, we're all like none of this is wrong. It's just like, where did the message come from? Maybe he misunderstands where the message. Maybe the message comes from God, and he just thinks that he's talking to an alien. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's not for me to determine, but it's so fascinating, and I really want to like with this new kind of like version of the podcast, like get deeper into the full realm of human experience as opposed to just like what's it like to be a video game designer or whatever.
Yeah. Like you said, you should bring your mom and tell that story because I think it would be really interesting too.
She's got lots of stories. That's just one of the ones that always comes to mind. But like, dude, my mom is crazy. Like, she's so cool.
Yeah, my mom too. Like she knows. Like, my mom and my dad, they have no college degree, and I don't have a college degree either. I went to college, but I never finished it. But they are so knowledgeable. Like my mom didn't even finish middle school, I think. But she's so knowledgeable about, for example, the law itself. She can talk to a lawyer, and sometimes the lawyer uses like technical terms and stuff that she actually understands what it means. And the lawyers would be like, how the fuck do you know all of that? Like, you don't even study law. You didn't even go to law school. Like, what is this? Like, she reads contracts and all that stuff, all the legal stuff that she had to like solve when she was still working. She has retired a few years now. But at the time, she would just like go in and study that shit and understand it. And same thing with psychology. Like, she understands a lot about psychology. She never even studied it by herself. I mean, she just learns by experience. And I would say that, what's the word? She's semi-illiterate. But
maybe that you got that autodidact part of you, like that self-taught
Yeah.
part of you from her.
Yeah. Like, for example, she didn't finish middle school. You might consider her semi-illiterate, but she makes up in other areas, So she's very intelligent. And I told my mom, hey, you have a pretty good foundation to just like go that way or the other way. Like if you want to study law or if you want to study psychology, like if you want to, you can do that. But at the same time, I don't like to be that guy who's just like, oh, you should do this all the time. Like at the end of the day, it's her life. Like if she wants to do it, she'll do it. Otherwise, I just don't like telling people what they should do. Because I had that for me, like for example, my dad and my brother used to tell me, oh, you should like go to this school or study this subject or do this. And my brother would say, oh, maybe you should translate. Oh, what's the word in English? What's the term? Oh, I forgot right now. But there are different fields that you can get into when it comes to translation, right? And so he said, oh, you should go to this field right here because it pays well. And I was like, okay, but I'm not interested in that. I'm gonna do something that I don't enjoy doing, and just because of the high payload, like a high paycheck. No, I don't. That's not how I work. That's not how I function, right?
Yeah. If I'm going to spend 40 hours a week for every week for the rest of my life doing something, it has to be something that I like doing. I'd rather make less money and do what I love than I would to have a lot of money and then suffer for just doing shit that doesn't interest me.
Totally. And
or so,
that's how I
forget about it. Not interesting. Like people break their backs. People are like literally like swinging fucking pickaxes, mining ore or whatever, gold, or like cobalt.
Yeah. For
money because they need the money. And I'm like, that's a horrible way to spend a lifetime.
Yeah.
You could do so much better.
Yeah, I only like would work in something that I don't enjoy if it was for survival purposes. Like I am in like this huge hole and the only way for me to survive is to like, I don't know, work at McDonald's or something like that. And so yeah, that's reasonable, that's understandable, at least for a while. And if I can, change careers, do something else, that's great. But I
really want to try Brazilian McDonald's.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's really, really tasty. Yeah. Delicious. So, I am very fortunate to be in a position where I can choose what I want to do. I can choose, if I want to work on something or not. So yeah, I am very fortunate. Like I am so lucky, compared to other people.
We both are, man. We live the simply charmed kind of life, I would say. That maybe I should throw that song in to the end.
Yeah.
It's been about 3 hours now, so I think we should probably like wrap it up.
Holy shit.
But this is great. Let's definitely do it again, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. It's always like, I always learn something new or, maybe several new things every time we speak. But yeah, you're amazing. What you do is important. What you do is like so helpful to so many people. And I hope that we get the chance to continue to work together and be friends for the rest of our lives.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for all the kind words. And likewise, I hope that we can still do this. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yo, thank you to Maleke for coming on the show and having such a great conversation yet again. Always a pleasure. Always something to learn from that guy. If you speak Portuguese, definitely go check out his show, Lock Jump Podcast. It's all about localization and translation. And, he's Portuguese. Well, Brazilian Portuguese, so that's what they're going to speak in. I can't understand it, but there are some English episodes that are worth listening to. So give him a shout. Thank you for supporting. If you want to support, you can go over to inthekeep.com. There's a whole support tab with all kinds of different ways. The main one is Patreon, of course. So thank you to our current active members, Shannon, Ant, Michael, Fred, Brad, and Dots. And to the rest of you that are on the free tier, if you want these episodes early, just go ahead and get ready to start cranking them out because that's what I'm going to do. And yeah, just jump on anytime you want. Anybody out there listening, thank you so much for doing so. And I want to say another shout to this amazing theme song by John of the Shred. Wonderful, absolutely awesome. Still super stoked. If you're listening to this show, you're going to have to get used to listening to this song because it's going to be in every episode at the beginning and the end, as usual. I don't really have much else to say other than I love you, God loves you, stay in the keep.